I like this quote from Buffett and some of the other people, right? That at the end, if you have some people who who should love you, really love you, right? Then it's a life well lived, right? If at the end of it, you know what, if you look back and have no regrets, and you have friends and family and everybody, like, I think it comes back from the same point we were talking about earlier, right? Who are the people at the age of 80, who you feel are the most content, right? When you look around, right? It's not the richest people, right? It's people who have a very healthy and a very content social life, who have taken, who have performed their responsibilities, their duties towards themselves, towards others, towards their family. And I think I read this somewhere, right? You write your own obituary and then you work backwards from there, right? I think same thing which Warren Buffett has said, right? So if you start thinking of it in that direction, a lot of things become clarifying, right? Work backwards, right?
Hello and welcome everyone. I am Vishal Khandelwal and this is the 1% Show. This show is an open ended exploration into the minds of the wisest people around to help us learn to think, invest, and live each day a little, even as little as 1% better. You can learn more about this initiative at safalniveshak.com or vishalkhandelwal.com. My guest today is Rohit Chauhan, founder of RC Capital Management, and maybe the first individual in India to start a blog dedicated to serious investing way back in 2004. Rohit is an engineer and MBA with 20 plus years of experience in different functions at large corporations in India and abroad. He was introduced to the investment world in the mid 90s when he started managing his family's finances. And over the years, he got interested in the learnings from some of the legendary investors like Ben Graham and Philip Fisher. Their teachings have formed the bedrock of his investment philosophy. And over the years, Rohit has also learned to apply behavioral aspects of investing in his process. He has been sharing his thoughts on value investing through his blog valueinvestorindia.com for the last 15 plus years. And I must confess here that he was one of the key inspirations for me to start my own journey in blogging and sharing my thoughts with the world at large. So thank you, Rohit, for that inspiration. And with this, and no further delay, I welcome you to the 1% Show. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Thanks, Vishal. Great to connect with you through this, although we have spoken quite a bit over the years.
Thanks, Rohit, and
Nice
I
to be
look
on
forward
your
to a
on your
conversation.
podcast.
Thanks, Rohit. I look forward to a conversation ahead. Uh, so, though I have introduced you, Rohit, can we start with a bit of a background from yourself? Like, where did you grow up and how were your early years like? Also, when you look back at your past and growing up years, which are those most important dots you can connect that brought you to where you are today?
Yep. Again, I've more or less most of my life I've stayed in Bombay. Uh, that's where I grew up. My dad also was an engineer. He and then he used to move around a little bit. We moved into Gujarat and then we came back to Bombay. So I mean, as I look back, I think one of the things which you realize only over time that you get unconsciously influenced is I've been around the Gujarati community quite a bit, and they have a very different mindset around around life and around work and everything. Very entrepreneurial, right, in nature, right? They look for opportunities at most of the time, but at the same time very very I would say very peace loving also. I mean, because my own family is from the north, we are from Delhi and that area, and the uh, my background, the community which I belong to, very want of a better word, very aggressive in nature, right? Rajputs, Thakur, whatever you to call it, the stereotypical Thakur in movies, right? Not entirely an exaggeration, some of them are. They are actually an antithesis for business and economics and everything, right? Because it's all about position and power. But with the Gujaratis, business community, you tend to imbibe that. You only realize that later in life, and then obviously, came back to Bombay, did my schooling, college, MBA, everything in Bombay. Pretty uneventful childhood. Like all of the rest of us, right? Good upbringing, lot of care and affection by our parents, right? I don't think, and we were short of anything, right? Whatever parents could provide, they did. So I think, that it's as you grow older, you feel a lot thankful about when you realize what else. And I think I read this somewhere. It's applicable to. It was quite a shocking statistics, if you may, that if in the early, I think, yeah, early to, maybe, early 90s, if your parents were graduates at that point of time, like, you were growing up in, let's say, in the 80s and 90s, and your parents were graduates at that time, you were in a household which was less than 2% of the Indian population. Like, that was the level of, I mean, the education levels in our generation have risen and so on, and that made a big difference in terms of the opportunities you had, the colleges you went, etc., etc., right? Because they were graduates, they understood the value of education, they kind of gave you that atmosphere. So the moment I think of that, what comes to my mind is that, we've all been very lucky. And although, we all want to think that, it's all on the strength of our own intelligence and brilliance and all that, but, I think luck plays a huge part. As you grow older, you realize that. So of course, all the good opportunities came my way, right? Got access to good education, and then over time, right, late 90s, early 2000, the internet came in, and that, I think, for all of us was a major, game changer, right? We got access to this whole world of investing, information, knowledge, being able to connect, right? That's how we are all connected. You and me also spoke through that, only connected through that. So as you look at the dots, it's a series of lucky breaks, if you want to call, or events, you want to call, right, where all of these things have slowly come together, right? The internet, I think, if family and your parents were the background which provided the launch pad, having the internet around, I think, was the real booster for at least for me, for sure, right? Otherwise, I still remember trying to get an annual report would be, going, walking to the or going to the broker's office and trying to get that in, that hard copy. Learning used to be very tough, right? To get a book was not an easy thing. Now, what, I think there's no excuse for not being able to learn. So as I look back, few big events, internet was definitely a big event, in my journey as an investor, right? Was a step change in the information I could access.
Those are great insights. No, as we talked in private earlier before starting on this conversation, right? I mentioned you that you've been an investor, but my idea with the 1% show is to go way beyond investing and seek your insights and ideas into how to live a life well, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I will try to do in today's conversation as well. So I'm going to talk to you a lot about other things than investing, right? Because you've already
Sure.
spoken a lot, you've written a lot about investing on your blogs, and I advise anyone who wants to start learning about sensible investing. Your blog is a wonderful resource to do that, right? But I still want to start, since you're an investor, I'm an investor. If we were to categorize that way, right? I still want to start this conversation with the best investing decision you ever made, and which was almost a decade back. So I read something about it. So, what did you
Sure.
exactly do? Why do you call it the best investing decision ever? Right?
Right.
And why did you do what you did then?
Right. So I think the background is this, that my dad passed away. Yeah, when I was quite young. I was still in my college, and unfortunately, I think parents in that generation. I think the reason, unfortunately, the I use the word unfortunately, is because the the surplus which they could generate out of their income was not very high, right? Our previous generation, current generation has a different issue, but our previous generation did not have as much to begin with, right? Like, salaries were not very high. I mean, he was an engineer from IIT, but if you were based in India and working in India, what you could earn and save was not very high. So when he passed away, not much in terms of finances we had, right? Like, we had just enough, but not enough to sustain my mother, for sure. And again, that is an event which has influenced my investing journey quite a bit, right? After he passed away, I think my I was never into money or investing or anything, right? I mean, it was something in the background. You just in your college days you just heard about something called the stock market, but I was absolutely not interested in that. But interestingly, after he passed away, that became a focus, because when you I think I read somewhere, right, that money is like, like oxygen, right? Too little or too much is obviously a problem. In this case, it was too little. So obviously, my focus turned to money as something, which would ensure that, we don't have to go through the same problems again, right? You don't face that again. Having less money, I think is an issue where it's not just about stuff, right? It's also about self confidence. It's also about, living life on your own terms or with pride. And those were the things which were in my mind. Now that kind of played into this post which I had written. So again, my mother had some amount of money. I was just starting off in terms of investing, so I didn't have the confidence to take her money and go and invest it in the market, right? I mean, the first thing I think any one of us who is starting off should do is, be cautious, right? When you're starting off, you never know. There is a learning curve. Very few people are able to avoid it. And when you're going through that, there is obviously a risk of losing that money. So I didn't want to take that risk with her money. But again, when you invest it in fixed income and you do not have an equity component, inflation starts eating, right? So this I'm talking of almost 14, maybe 15 years of drawing from that corpus. That money started, the corpus had come to a point where it was very obvious to me that at the current rate we would deplete through her savings in the next 10 or 12 years at best. So at that point of time, I had two options. One is, let things continue as is, and then kind of, cover the balance, from my side, which is, I think, a very fair point of doing it. But then my thought was that, the second option is always there, and that goes without saying. I will do that. But why not build her corpus in a sensible and in a sustained manner, so that she knows that she has that money, right? It's a very big difference. I see that now, and I cannot emphasize enough, to others who are going through this, both for their kids and their parents, right? When you know that you don't need something, but when somebody else is giving that money to you, it feels very different. It is voluntary, right, versus being forced. And you do not want your parents to feel that, or anybody to feel forced into accepting money from you, right? Then it's a very different interaction. It's a very different feeling, right? It's almost like, I'm asking for money, right? And I know, a lot of people, parents and your family, feel, even if they don't feel resentful, they don't feel really good about it. So that was the entire decision. So, the structure was very simple. I just told my mom, again, parents, right? So, if no matter what you tell them, they'll kind of accept it at face value. They say, okay, you know what, if you are saying this, I'll take it. So I told her, I'll invest your money, right? And if there is a loss, I'll cover it. So let's say, on 10 lakhs, if you lose 50,000, that I will cover it. I'll ensure that the principal is always intact. Upside is yours, right? So that's something to give her comfort. And then again, the other thing was to stop withdrawals completely, right? Because, it was the analogy which I used for to her was that, this is like a small well where money is flowing in and money is coming out, or whatever water is coming out. And this is time to let the water flow in, and it is time to stop, drawing the water out, let the well fill, right? And then, she said, okay, right? So this is 2011 when I started the advisory also. So the clear point was, I'm not going to do A for me, B for my mother, and C for somebody else, right? It's all one and the same. Again, that ensures that the incentives are all aligned, right? If I'm going to invest my own money and my family's money in the same way, then, I'm going to be cautious, right? I'm going to be cautious for myself, for her, and for everybody else. So that's what we did. We just went ahead and I just invested our money. And again, the great thing is that the Indian markets have done well, right? I mean, for all the ups and the downs, it's one of the best markets across the world, right? And the compounding happens. So now she's at a situation where the money is more than enough. The standard withdrawal rates we talk of, right? 4%, 5%, whatever that is. Again, her needs are much lesser. Maybe she doesn't even need that much. It's overshot what she needs. But I can already see that, right? She knows that money is there. I have to remind her that you can spend as much as you want. She doesn't want to do it like most of our parents, right? Have less needs, right? But gives her the confidence, right, that if she wants to spend on something, that money is there, right? So she doesn't have to ask anything from anyone. If someone gives it, it's her kids give anything, it's their it's their choice, and she has a choice to accept it, or not to take it. So I would, that's why I consider it, the fulfillment sometimes you get, out of spending money on buying a new car, or a this, it's, I think all of us have seen that, right? The happiness we got from buying, what, when we were growing up, getting a small little lunch box or a pencil box or a bag, that happiness is more than what you get by buying a big car or a laptop or something. Same thing here, right? I think maybe more, as much for her, this has been also a case of giving back something for your parents, for all that they have done, right? So maybe, partly this was my way of giving back to her. And again, money you can always give, right? It's not the big deal, right? It's going beyond that. Again, nothing unique, I think, but anybody who's on this path earlier in life, I think, and has the skill and the knowledge of investing, you should use that particular knowledge, right? Why not use it first also for your family, and then for others also, right? The power of compounding for them.
I'm sure, and I think I
So yeah,
draw out a couple of very important lessons, which are probably largely unsaid, and you also did not really talked about that directly over here. One thing is, what I've realized is that as we grow in age, right, as kids, and we are still kids, and we have parents, right, we make plans for our retirement, we make plans for our kids and their marriage and their education and foreign travel and all that kind of thing. Somehow, somewhere down the line, the parents get kicked out of that financial plan, right? So you're always preparing for the future, right, for your
correct, 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 correct.
yeah, successors and everyone, but your predecessors, or the parent who's still there, staying with you, maybe as a dependent, he or she gets moved out of your financial plan. It's only about me and my family, and probably that
Correct.
definition of family also comes down. So that is one lesson which I see unique in your story. And beyond that, rather than looking at a parent who's aging, who's frailing, the body is frailing, the mind is frailing, as a dependent, right? What you did, and I think that's a great lesson for youngsters and people like me as well. What you did was to not provide her with money directly, but provide her with the independence of choosing what she
Correct.
can do with her money when, as and when she needs it, right? So giving her that power at her age, right? I think
Absolutely.
it's a tremendous lesson for anyone young who's listening, who wants to pursue
And again,
something.
it's not that you have to, again, it wasn't that, I was putting my own capital into it. I could easily have, right? But then the entire idea right from that point was, as you said, right? It's a sense of independence and pride, right? I mean, she knows it, right? She knows. I mean, I have, and all of us do that, right? The first reaction which all of us have is, right, anybody from our generation, any of the kids, or anybody who is growing up and has an income, they, they do, that's the good thing about the Indian, Indian psyche and the culture. They will take care of their parents. Majority of them do, right? The typical approach is, you will take a certain percentage of your income, and you help them out. And that's where the word help comes in, right? What I wanted to, and again, it's sort of, it wasn't a grand plan, but at least, I had that thought in mind that, why not compound the capital for them, because then it's their corpus, right? What you do beyond that is, it's your choice, right? But just by doing this, whatever you're doing for your kids, right? We do that, right? We give them education. Sometimes, if you have some surplus, you will invest it for them. Why not reverse it to the generation before you? And then, why not expand it beyond that? I've gone that beyond, to other members of the family also. Again, not everybody listens to you, but whoever does, right? Okay, you know what? Why don't you, simple things, right? I'm not going to actively manage money for them, because it also comes down to, I know I've tweeted about this, and sometimes people say, what, my dad or this, they would not listen to me. And I understand that, right? That's a big part. If your parents are not comfortable with this, then, it's tough. But, you should have that dialogue. Gain their trust slowly. Don't ask them to give 100% of their net worth and say, okay, Dad, I'm going to go ahead and invest everything in the stock market. It's tough for them. Take a small portion, right? Take 5% of this, show it to them, it's working, through the ups and downs, and then go to 10, and then go to 20. Again, when I invested, it wasn't more than 50% of our capital. It's not like I took everything and said, you know what, now I'm going to go and do some magic in futures and options. Nothing of that sort. No crazy stuff. So yeah, it becomes a responsibility, right? You try to be very sensible with it, because it's their money, it's limited money. You don't want to blow it up, right? So
Sure, sure. Having that sense of fiduciary responsibility without having that formal structure of a mutual fund versus investor, you're here, you're
correct,
taking care of the families, or probably not just taking care, you're empowering themselves or them to take care of their money themselves by just guiding them in that direction that you think is
correct,
right.
correct,
So
correct,
I
correct.
think
Yeah.
that's a lesson in
So yeah, I
empowerment
mean,
also.
and again, I'm going to extend that now to my kids also, right? And I'm sure, I think, Vishal, you do that through your own. I know you've written very nice illustrated books on that. Very nice, posts on that. Same thing, right? Why hand kids a bunch of money, right? Slowly guide them into learning about this and investing. Again, not complicated, but it's behavioral stuff, right? Which unfortunately in India, and again, it's in other countries also, right? It's not taught enough, right? This is a very important life skill which none of us get taught when we are growing up, right? It's about work hard, make money. That's 50%, right? How to spend and how to save and invest. Is saving is also a good, I mean, it's ingrained in us, but we don't play the defense. We play the defense very well, we don't play the offense reasonably well, right? Often we do, most Indians do, a lot of, either they're too passive or they're way too aggressive, right? That middle path somehow is often missing, right? It's either futures and options or FDs, right? There is no, often the middle path is missing, right? So, but anyway,
That is true. I think in a society there that we've grown up in, where scarcity has been paramount, right? With the scarce resources, scarce money everywhere, especially in a middle class environment, right? So I think probably that is what makes people so, right. So either they come with a scarcity mindset that I should not lose my money because the money is scarce and we've seen difficult times, or
right.
because we've seen difficult times, right? Now is my time to play that offense and on the front foot rather than just saying that. And sometime in
Right.
the front foot,
Just
you end up getting out as well. So I think that's part of the
just swing
cycle.
for the fences, right? I mean,
Correct.
when I see all the amount of, you can see it with some of the companies also, right? The amount of activity on FNO, the futures and options, and I'm just amazed at, the I'm sure, right, not everybody is making money, right? When was the last time when everybody made money in a casino? Yeah, there are obviously some people who do, but there are much more simpler ways of of achieving your goals than trying to swing for the fences. But anyway, you know people have to go through their own journey to learn the same lessons, right?
That is
you,
including our children
you
as well.
can't
So
teach.
rather than, yeah, that's true. Rather than trying to clear the way for them, I think if we can just teach them how to make their own path and clear their ways for themselves, right? Even if they struggle and fall
Yeah,
down, right? So
correct.
I
Yeah, I
remember
heard
again
a
having
great analogy on this one. Instead of helicopter parents, now parents are the snowplow or the bulldozer parents, right? What that means is we are working hard to just clear the way for our kids so that they have like a smooth this thing. And I don't think that's a uh, you know that helps them grow. But anyway,
that certainly. I
everybody.
remember having this conversation about kids and money with Morgan Housel in a previous episode, one episode which I did with him. And he, I think, has written about it that how he's not going to give any money or write any check for his kids, right? So when I asked him
Hmm.
what exactly is that, so his idea is, and I think something which I really appreciated is that when you have kids, right, stop from being selfish to selfless, right? Your entire world revolves around your kids, right? But then giving them easy money is a way to spoil
Right,
them, right? So his idea
right,
was to tell them or teach them that I am there as a parent to cover your downside, right? Something goes wrong, we as parents are there, but the
right,
upside is there for you to take and for you to build, right? So that is not where I am going to help. This is what he, I think, indicated to me, if I remember right. I think that's a great lesson that
correct.
rather than just talking to our kids about money and investing, if we can show them, right, the
Right,
struggles and tell them that it's not such an easy path as the world
easy
makes
thing.
makes it out to be, right? So right, so I think that's a great lesson. Well
I mean,
said.
in that sense, I've, you tend to kind of follow what your parents have done. At least that's the initial template you work with. I've done that same, but again, my thinking over time has also changed on that one, right? To a certain extent, not certain, I think in terms of money and how, to manage it with kids, at least me and my wife, we are 100% on the same page. uh, Surprisingly, you would, I know somebody, would think that if you're into investing your kids, you would be talking about it. We don't talk about investing per se, because my kids and my wife are absolutely not, keen on stock markets and everything, and I also never try to impinge that on them, right? Everybody should come up with their own interests and passions in life, right? Why would you do that? But I think, as you said, right, with what Morgan Housel has said, and what I've seen others also, we've tried to ensure that they understand the value of money, right? It's not something, so they still do not, for them it is like, okay, you know what, our education will be taken care of, and then that's it. Maybe we'll even have to take care of our parents, because they don't, they may or may not have enough. So again, it's a very personal thing. In some families, people want to go down this path. It's We all figure it out as we go along, right? No correct way of doing it. So again, I think my own thoughts are still being formed, right, as I see them grow up. But I think I agree, right? I'm not going to sit down and tell them, here is a pile of money, go ahead and, no, I really doubt that's going to happen. Let's
I've
see.
cleared that with my kids as well, that you're not going to get anything from me because
Yeah,
the
no, but
path is very
I'm
clear.
not of that extreme
I'm
view
not
also.
extreme. Same here.
Yeah, again, for
Uh,
some reason, what, maybe it's, you can be as rational as possible in terms of money, but when it comes to your kids, it's like, for me, again, what I keep telling them is, money is, it's nice to buy stuff. Like, this is one conversation I've had a lot of times when, we're driving around, we're moving on, they'll look at somebody and say, oh, they'll see some shiny stuff with somebody, right? And they'll say, oh, this person is rich. And both me and my wife always make the point, no, we do not know whether they're rich or not. What we know is they've spent a lot of money. You will never know by looking at someone whether they are rich or not. You just know that they spent a lot of money. And then with both of them, I've told them, especially my older one, who is now studying, is that money gives you optionality as you grow up. When you grow up and you're working, you have the option of working there, going somewhere else, leading life on your own terms. Does not mean you have to deprive yourself, but keep in mind, money is optionality for you. So that's the thing which I keep telling them. So I think it's more about, okay, the numbers and the and all of that. It's about, okay, what can money and wealth do for you, right? I think, which is what you've also covered as part of your podcast, and which Morgan and of a lot of other, I mean, I think the easiest way to see that is, look around you and see people who have done a good job at it, right? Why you don't have to discover everything on your own. So that's what I think. That is my focus. Same thing was with my parents also, right? When we spoke about the decision I made, and same thing is with them, right? Same logic. What can money do for you in terms of leading a better life? I think that's what we are all trying to do, right?
That's it. And we're going to talk about that. I have a few questions on what
Sure.
money can get you, right, in terms of a better life. So, yeah. Uh, you wrote a post in 2019, which was titled Some Early Lessons. And you wrote about how your father lost some money after being cheated by an unscrupulous middleman who, under the
Right.
promise
Right.
of high fixed returns, invested in business that ultimately went bankrupt. And you also wrote that your father also lost some money in the deposits of a plantation company, again, one promising a
Correct.
high return. And all of this happened before you got involved in equities and you started investing money on your own. So these incidents you wrote in that article, they taught you some very valuable lessons that have helped you all your life. So could you please talk about some of those lessons here?
I think the couple of things, and again, I managed to. I think I further wrote about that. I also managed to lose money because of the same process. In this case, what I learned was, uh, don't believe high returns. When somebody is coming and promising you high returns, don't trust that. And in both these cases, that was the thing, right? And that's unfortunately the backdrop or the world in which our parents lived, right? They considered stock markets as very risky, a place of gambling. There was hardly any communication, any education which was happening at that time. So they looked at two extremes, right? At one extreme, it was the fixed deposit, right? Safe, steady. And then how would you increase your returns, right? You went for the other extreme in terms of the extremely high risk situations, right? Which both these avenues were, right? Both cases, it was it was a very high risk scenario, which was sold as a low risk option, and then it came to bite us. It came to bite us back, right? So that was the, that was the learning, which I got, uh, uh, that if something is too good to be true, it isn't, right? So that was a very early lesson, and then I managed to make the same mistake of, buying some stocks through a broker, and then that broker, went back on their, promise of delivering that. This is before you could get, most of the listeners would not know this, but in the late 90s, you there was no demat. You bought a share, then the broker would deliver you a piece of paper, and then you would sign, and the sign would not match, and it was like markets were not clean, right? So now, the main thing, which, again, I became very cautious about, of somebody promising a high return, and uh, uh, you know trusting that. But again, then, I started investing, and I invested money in the this is during the start of the dot-com boom. And again, I listened to what the fund house or the intermediary had to say, and again, but there I was to blame, at least in the first two cases. The If the broker ran away with your money, at least, the system has worked against you. But it's not that, you were cheated out of money, in these, in the case where I had done this investment. So the way it has influenced, this is that, obviously, I've become very cautious of high returns, right? Unless I know, where those returns are coming from, I try to avoid it. And second, right, again, I think, the num the avenues for investment are always very limited. You know that there are only a couple of investment classes, right? There's equities, there is debt, real estate, right? What else is there? Everything else is a repackaging of it. So anytime somebody tries to promise very high returns, you just have to lift the hood and understand, look at it, like what's going on behind it. And that's when I started, really digging deeper into it, right? When I had to look at the finances for my parents, for myself, and everything. Again, the journey doesn't take too long, and I think that's, hopefully, that is some education which, I think you have provided, through your writings and books and everything. And that's something, I know, if the current generation can kind of get, that is half the battle. If you can avoid such kind of a mess over your investing lifetime, and earlier the better, right? Make your mistakes early in life, the better it is, right? It leaves a very bad taste and a very bad feeling, right? You lose trust in the system. So that is what, I went through, and I think a lot of people, like me, have gone through that phase. Unfortunately, they are going through that phase even now also, right? We have all this mis-selling which happens, unfortunately. And that is even worse, I would say, right? You will not trust somebody with a lot of money. Somebody came up and gave you some magic scheme and said, I can promise you 20%. You'll be very wary. But what if one of the bank, your friendly relationship manager, came and missold you, a bad, investment policy, which I've seen, right? When I wrote a post on this also on ULIPs, I was shocked to see the kind of mis-selling which was happening. Somebody was selling a policy which had huge loads on it, which was 5% IRR at best, when FDs were like 9%. And again, this is like a 20-year old policy, and this mis-selling was happening. So, very unfortunate, but it does happen. If you can be cautious about it, that's great.
That's right. I think again, in a previous episode where I was talking to Nilesh Kotak, and he mentioned that we Indians find new ways of losing money, right? So sometimes it's ULIP, sometimes it's casino, sometimes it's dot-com stocks, or sometimes it's power stocks and all those kind of things, and bitcoins and all those kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
Uh,
I
I
mean,
think
yeah.
I think
No, sorry, go ahead.
it's a yeah. I think very early in life, and this is something which I also learned the hard way. And people who have a lot of resources these days to learn the sensible way of investing, I think it's very important for us to understand, and people, youngsters, to understand that winning then losing is different than losing then winning, right?
Oh
So
yeah,
if
sequence
you if you
matters.
that's right, if you earn say 1 crore from the market and you lose say 50 lakh, you're still fine. But if you start with 50 lakh loss, right, just because you are
Oh yeah,
trying
yeah.
to go for that big shot and try to earn that money quickly, I think you will be scarred for life, right? And
Oh
you'll be
yeah, yeah, yeah.
thinking of money as, or stock markets as, a casino and not going to come back, right? So I think that sequence matters so
Oh,
much.
sequence matters definitely, which is where the FNO bit, when you hear about it, right? It's the famous turkey problem which Nassim Taleb keeps talking about, right? I hear about people selling puts and all that, and I'm like, yeah, it all works fine when the volatility is low and everything is going hunky dory, right? Uh, but anyway, I mean, people talk of systems and everything, and I have a system by which I will cap the losses, and I think all of us have seen that, right? That these systems work 99% of the times, right? It's that 1% of the time which kills you, right? So again, I think at least on my personal investing journey, I've been like, my margin of safety has a margin of safety. That's how I think, right? Like, I mean, I've been such a chicken in terms of investing, that okay, diversification, this, that, right? And the point being, right, what's the hurry, right? Like, what, if you become financially independent at 40 instead of 50, right? What's the big deal which will happen, right? I mean, if you take care of other things in life and you are healthy and everything and you live till 100, then what big deal, right? So, but it comes to the same thing, right? Everybody wants to get, a lot of people, not everybody, I think, a lot of people want to get rich quickly, right? And we've read all Warren Buffett and everybody say that, right? If you're okay with getting rich slowly, you will get there, right? So I think it's that thing,
Yes, yes. I also wrote. In fact, my last post was about it, and it was relating climbing stairs with
correct,
investing, right? So an experience that is just an accidental experience where I started climbing stairs a few months back. So 5 floors to buy an apartment, and I was just running and like huffing and puffing, right? And it took me
hmm,
around 30 seconds to climb those 5 stairs, right? And at the end of it, I was like physically exhausted, mentally exhausted, and like
correct,
breathless for the next 30, 35 seconds, 1 minute, and so my heart rate was up and all
correct,
those stuff happened. I
correct,
was about
correct,
to give up, and then I don't know why. Suddenly, one day, I realized that okay, let me take it a bit more relaxed, right? Instead of like huffing and puffing, let me go at a bit more relaxed pace. I'll still maintain some pace. I'll still climb
correct,
say 2 stairs at a time. I'll still not stop in between and still climb those 5 stairs on a daily basis. And
right,
when I did that first time on a very relaxed basis, not a very relaxed basis, much relaxed basis, the timing it took me was 35 seconds. So
correct.
what I realized is that all that huffing and puffing, all that exhaustion was just to save those 5 seconds,
Just 5 seconds,
right?
right?
That
Yeah,
that caused me a mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, much beyond that relaxed
correct,
run up take. And that's such a nice, I think, analogy which I again relearned about investing, that you can reach there, right? Just that, do you want to reach there faster, or do you want to reach there, or at least reach there, and you survive and you
correct,
don't
correct,
die or don't kill yourself. So I think
correct, correct, correct.
that's such an important lesson that I learned.
You
And
see that in all a lot of aspects of life, people talk about compounding and everything, right? And that's where I think you and me were when we were exchanging notes, right? uh, Everybody is focused on the T or the N or whatever it is, right, and not on the R. And I think I read a similar experience from somebody else also, right? This person is driving, and he would drive aggressively versus he would drive slowly, right? And in the end, uh, he would he saw that he saved not more than 5% of whatever he was trying to do, but the effort or the delta was 2x or 3x, right? So you're right. I mean, often some of us who are investors and are very patient, we only at a later point we realize that those same concepts, the underlying concepts, can be applied to other areas. It's like, can you uh, can you raise your kids at a faster rate? You can't, right? They'll grow at their own rate, right? You suddenly want them to go from 10 to 15, it's not going to happen. It's one day at a time. Applies to other places in life also, right?
I'm sure, and I'm sure you talked about the idea of compounding, and the idea that we largely focus on the R, which is return, and which is not in our control, and we don't focus on the T, which is time, which is largely in our more so in our control than, at least compared to the R out there.
Correct,
You've been an investor for a longer time, Rohit, and I'm sure you've observed the behavior of most investors out there, and also
right,
how difficult it may have been, if that it may have taken you to internalize this idea of long-term compounding as well, even after you've seen the astounding
right,
results of long-term compounding. Right?
right.
So, what according to you makes compounding so difficult as a practicing experience, and how have you realized the benefits of compounding, not just in investing but also other areas of
Right,
life, like learning, like health, like relationships?
right, right. So a few observations, right? I think most of the investors, I would say 99% who start studying and reading, know the concept of compounding. Very big difference, right? It's like I know how to ride a bike, or I know how somebody swims, but actually, again, even those analogies don't go far enough, right? Uh, you can know about the concept of compounding, but having to go through it is a very different thing. So one is obviously patience, which everybody talks about, but patience for what, right? What invariably I think trips up is that you will have periods where the biggest thing is it does not go in a linear, in a linear fashion. Compounding, what, if let's say magically, our, I think our stock markets do what, 13, 14%, 15%, whatever. If magically every month you got 0.75% or whatever, you divide that compounding this and divide it by that particular, 12 or something, and you got 0.75, a lot of people would be able to, patiently hold, right? Because you knew end of the month, this is the return I get, and if I can just project it, it'll all be fine and dandy. The problem which most of us end up facing is that the compounding is not linear. It happens in bursts, right? There'll be a year of plus 30%, and then there will be a year of minus 10%, or there could be extended periods of up and down, and that's where people lose patience. So I think that's where it is, right? The r is not spread out, the r is lumpy. So I think that is what creates that particular lack of patience, if you may, right? We will feel all very euphoric when r is very high. So that's problem number one. Second is obviously the results are all back ended. Initial years, I think, again, if I take it a separate area, right? And I know you asked this question. It started with my blog. I know you referenced it, and I remember when I started writing for the first time. Either it was completely, it was like the difference between night and day. Today you will find a lot of the content. That time when I wrote, it almost felt like, like I was talking in the dark, right? There's like absolutely nobody's listening, nobody's hearing, right? There's no conversation online about investing in India. And when I was writing for the first year, you could see the stats, right? Because it was on blog post, and there would be like 5 people or 7 people who would read. And my guess is, maybe one of those would be me, or somebody, some friend of mine would have looked at it. So there is no, you don't see any benefits out of this for the next first 3 4 years. And then I started writing, and I kept writing, and I don't know why, but I just kept doing it because I just like to do it. And that's where, all the benefits have come back and dead. Our conversation is a result of that. Me, getting in touch with you is a result of that. So many of my friends I know, I have developed it through the blog. My advisory, the work which I do, is all a result of that. So again, the benefits have come back ended. The benefit has all been the compounding aspect of it, right? Slowly over time, people came to know about it, started reaching out to me, I started reaching out to them. And now after, let's say, 15 years, I don't write as much, but the benefits still keep flowing in. So friendships, the advisory which we have started, a lot of non monetary benefits have all come back ended. So I think that's the thing, right? Initially, compounding, or whatever activity you start, you don't see any results, and that's where most of the people, kind of give up hope. And second, the intermittent nature of it, right? It's lumpy, right? That's true with one of the most important relations, a few more important relationships of our life, right? Our parents, and the same thing with our kids, right? You're investing in your kids for 20 years, right? You don't see the results in year 5 or year 7 or year 10, right? You see the results maybe 2022, 25 years later, and again, it's not assured, right? It's not like what you hoped and, wished for your kids, the same thing will happen. So I think that's where it comes in. And it's true for health also. I've done the same mistakes as far as my own health is concerned, right? Push yourself too hard, right? Like you gave the example of stairs, and, I can totally relate with that, right? Oh, you want to run the marathon very quickly, so you start training very hard, and then you hurt your back, or you hurt your shoulder or something, right? Why not, I started following a few, health, kind of coaches, and they bring up the same thing. Take it easy, take it slow, right? My doctor said the same thing when I'd hurt myself. He said, you're going to exercise for the rest of your lifetime. What are you in a hurry about? Like, take it easy, don't injure yourself. Slowly, right? Like your show's title, right? 1%, just improve by 1% in a year. You'll be far better off, in a few years. So we don't do that, right? We relearn the same lesson in all aspects of life as we go through it.
And we're
But
still not
better,
willing to take that lesson, remember that when we are exploring the
yeah.
next aspect of our life. So I think
Correct,
so
correct,
that
correct. But
lesson.
it's a wonderful concept which you can take into all aspects of life, right? It's not about money, not about investing alone, right? It's, you start transplanting it into other areas of life, health, relationships. Forget money. Money. There is a passive part of it, so it'll get taken care of. But all the other areas, you have to constantly keep investing in them. You do that, right? All the benefits, all the joy out of it is all back ended.
That's
So
right. And I can also, as you're talking about this thing, compounding and lumpiness and back-ended nature of compounding, right? I remember having a talk with a friend almost a year back where he surprisingly told me that he watched the 1% show. So none of my friends watch my shows. So he was one of
we are
those.
in the same bucket. None of my friends read read my blog, which is fine.
Yeah, which is fine, perfectly fine. So he asked me, so he saw a few guests on the show, and his question was, "What did you do to deserve all these guests?" And I'm still finding an answer for that. Or what did I deserve, or what good did I do in my previous work to even talk to or get connected to people like you and others who've graced this podcast for me, and who I've been like had a chance to talk to one on one. So I think the answer, I don't know whether that's a perfect answer, but uh, he asked me how much time did it take you to convince these people to come on your show, and I think the answer that instantaneously came to my mind was 10 years, right? It took me
Excellently.
10 years of gradual work without expecting that I would be starting a podcast or talking to people or having these people come on my show, or agreeing, at least
And
agreeing
generosity,
to.
right? Generosity and kindness, right? I mean, when you have done this for 10 years, you've not asked for anything from anyone, right? You're generously sharing your understanding, your knowledge, kindness, right? People can figure it out, right? It's, I think that's what, you can create the most shiniest of the blog or the shiniest of this, but over time people can see through it, right? Whether your heart is into it or not. So I think, people can read that, and that's the case with your work also, right? You've consistently done it. You've done it with full heart, and you've done it with generosity, right? You've shared, right? And it every people realize that, right? Yeah. People do
Thankfully they
understand
noticed.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Thankfully
of
they
course, it
noticed
always
that.
happens, right? You've seen it, right? We see it all around us, right?
That's true,
If
that's
you're
true,
generous,
agree.
you give more than you ask for, it comes back to you, right?
I'm sure, as they
So
say, karma is, if karma was a restaurant, right, there would be no menu. You will get what you deserve. So I don't know whether I'm deserving or
exactly,
not,
yeah.
but I think that is a lesson which I would want to pass on to my kids or anyone who's willing to listen, that you need to keep on doing good without even seeking credit for it, because the work in
Yeah.
itself is the credit that you receive and it comes
Mm.
back to you.
And
So I think
it comes naturally to somebody, and like, I know for myself, right? It doesn't come naturally to me. I have to remind myself, right? Because that, at least my basic wiring is, what, you first think about yourself and then about others. So it's something which I have learned. I've looked around, and I see my wife and some of them, they, some, you kind of, you learn from others, right? You see people who are generous, who are kind, who are empathetic, right? So I've seen that with my wife, with some of my extended family, right? Far more empathy than, I unfortunately, are a very, numbers oriented, math, this, that, right? I mean, all of us are, right? Engineering background, the way we were brought up, right? Again, if your household was just boys, one more notch lesser in terms of empathy. But over time you realize that, right? That, being kind, being generous, you know just for the sake of it, forget what will come back to you, right? It's just a better way of living, and a better life, right? Whether it all comes all together at some time in life, and pays that, actually you should not be thinking that, right? If it comes, it comes. Otherwise, the reward is just being, and again, nothing new or unique, right? You and me are talking about, you read, you hear it, but we all learn it on our own, right? When we practice it, right? Practice it for a few years without any results, and then you realize that, oh, you know what, this is actually a good way of, like, just be polite on your online interactions, right? I just try to do that, right? If somebody is trying to poke me, or somebody is trying to, be rude, just ignore, right? I mean, big deal, right? So my personal experiences on social media is that I've rarely ever been trolled or poked, right? Because if a person does it, I just ignore and move on, right? Okay, you know what, if this is what you want to do, then it's up to you. I have no desire in in getting into an ego fight whether you are smarter than me or not. Maybe you are, right? Good for you.
That that is true. That's like a rabbit hole. If we get into it, I think we are lost anyway.
Correct.
So it's better to just not get into that in the first place.
Correct. You do your thing, and then you know what, somebody gets, if somebody doesn't like it, then so be it, right? I mean, you.
That's right. And your thought again resonate with the idea of compounding goodwill. I think that Guy Spear wrote about in The Education of a Value Investor, and he's talked about it on
Correct.
the podcast as well. That he started writing thank you notes to his to strangers and to unknown
Correct.
people, right?
Yeah,
And
I
that's
read
how
that.
right. His initial idea was that he'll get more people to know about him to get more business, but it went beyond that in terms of friendships that
Absolutely.
he's developed for lifelong. So I think yeah,
Correct.
that's a compounding works.
Yeah.
Completely agree with
And
that.
and I think we've all read, right? Warren Buffett say this, right? That money can't buy friends, true friends and happiness and all that, right? So just a simple analogy, right? Even if it's from a selfish standpoint, if at a later point in life that is what you want, right? If you work backwards from there, what do you want towards the later part of life? Good relationships, good friends, you know, what would you do, right? Or good health, same thing, right? What would you do? You would like money, you would invest, right? Now, with investing, you are reading, you're investing capital and all that. With if you want these things in life, if you just think through it logically, how would you do this, right? The way to get good friends is to be kind, be generous, be good to people, and you keep putting it. Think of it like your account or your portfolio, but it's a non-monetary portfolio. I mean, health and exercise, right? Same thing, right? You can't be fit at say 60 or 70 if you keep withdrawing from that account, right? So I think that's the again, you should not overdo it. Right? If you stress push yourself too hard also, it doesn't work. But outside of that, right, same concepts, right? If you've invested from 20 to 40 and you're reaping the benefits in your 50s, or you're going to reap your benefits in that later part, same thing is true for other areas, right? What to do with your kids, your friends, and your family. So yeah, some like some stocks, some relationships will not work out, but on average, right, there will be ups and downs, but on average, it will work out pretty well. So
That is true. So keep
yeah,
trying and just move on. Keep trying and just move on. So
correct. The same thing we
yeah,
do we do as investors, right? We
that is true.
we invest in 10 stocks, or we diversify into 20 stocks, and 10 work, and then they compound. We've seen all of that, in our personal and our online friendships also, right? You reach out to so many people, and then you form some very good relationships over a very long period of time, and that those are your multi-baggers of personal life, right? They pay for everything else 100 times over, right? Money cannot buy that.
Money cannot buy for sure. Uh, Moving from compounding to another idea, which I think you've talked about and you've written about in the past, that is simplicity. Right? I think that's again another concept which is very close to me because I try to personally imbibe this idea of simplicity in how I invest, how I live, and how I interact with
Right.
people, and just keep life simple. I think anyway,
Right.
things are complex. So if you add your own complexity, I think you are in for a big trouble or probably something like
Right.
that. You wrote a letter to your subscribers in 2021 about the
Hmm.
importance of simplicity in life and personal finance. And you wrote something which I quote. So, when I started investing, I thought there is some magic formula to grow your capital. After 10 years of search, I realized that the answer was staring me in my face. The key to wealth creation was very simple, which is save aggressively and invest patiently. I'd always done that first, but was doing it wrong with the second part of the equation. Like most young, hot blooded guys, my focus was to make the highest possible return in the shortest time possible. After a decade of doing that, I realized that the stress and effort was not worth it. In addition to the lost sleep, I was reluctant to invest most of my capital to my own stock selection. Most likely, it must have been the a risk of my approach which made me very cautious. So that's exactly what you wrote. Now I have understood in my experience that simplicity is a virtue to strive for. My question to you is, how do you incorporate simplicity in your own life and what have been the rewards?
Yeah.
Also, second question connected, in your pursuit of bringing simplicity to your investing and personal finance, what key decisions and actions did you undertake? And what are you doing to simplify your financial life even further?
Yeah. So again, this is something which a lot of these things, right? You understand the concept, but you struggle in practice. Same for me. It's not like I'm like at a Zen state where I've simplified. If that was the case, then a lot more to be done. So it's obviously a work in progress, as it would be, right? I think the starting point has been these different experiences, right, where you realize that when you look back, you realize that the amount of effort and complexity you brought, right, it did not help. It did not help me achieve my goals. It was actually taking me away from my goals. So say, like for about investing, right? You know trying a bunch of things. Again, it's again the same process of discovery and everything, but taking an aggressive approach or trying to find that magic idea, right? So over time, again, comes to the concept of compounding. If you keep it simple, if you reduce the complexity, then you can be more patient, right? Because there is less stress involved in it. And I think, as I was saying, right, there is enough complexity in life and in investing and everything, that the stress and everything kind of knocks you off the path. So couple of things which I've done in finances, right? First of all, try to boil down uh, what I would invest and leave everything else aside, right? So people will say, what, there is this Bitcoin which is going to do well, and there are futures and options which will do well, or there is real estate. I realize that I am comfortable with equity, right? So why should I jump around trying 20 other things? Yeah, sure, there is time is the most constrained resource, right? If I have to focus my attention, let me just focus on a few things. Spend my time on equity, gives reasonably good returns, I'll just stick with that. So start saying no to a few things which does not make, I just don't want to go down that part. So I kept learning about cryptocurrencies, but I never got serious because I knew I did not want to go down that path, right? Way too much of a pain and a headache. Same thing around real estate, same thing around venture capital investing or private investing, whatever you want to call it, right? So just keep it limited to a couple of asset classes which I'm comfortable with, one mainly equity, and just leave it at that. Second thing I think which happens around finances for all of us, right? 5 bank accounts, 4 insurance policies, three, I don't know, some other instrument. Start reducing it, bring it down to a point where I just manage the risk and the reward, but figure out what is needed. And same true for my family, for myself, right? Just reduce the administrative load around all these things, right? Again, it's a work in progress, right? Life and your personal life and everything, they tend to increase complexity, so you have to actually work towards reducing this. And I think in my own case also, often you lack of confidence or that fear causes you to to run after 10 things, right? I don't know what I'm missing out, maybe I do these 5 things, I will be successful. So again, it comes down to patience, right? Saying, okay, you know what, this seems to be working, fair enough, right? Initially when you're starting off, you can try out a few things, but you think, okay, these are the few things which are working, let me just stick with it, right? Let me just ignore the noise around, same thing around diet and everything, right? So one day is low carb diet, other day is this. Why not just figure out a few simple things, right? You eat this. Again, I think one of the, maybe I've realized over time, one of the strengths which I have is I have a lot of patience for doing the same thing for a very long period of time. So like my wife and my family gets frustrated that I can eat the same breakfast for years at a row, but which makes you an individual a very boring one. But if something is working okay for me, I just ignore everything else. Okay, this works nice. I can eat vada pav every day. Not that I do, but I'm just saying, right? That, I don't want. I'll try out some other stuff occasionally, but that's what I'll just stick to it. So same thing for other areas also, right? Like okay, equities work fine for me. I'm just going to ignore everything else. These two, this one bank is good enough for me. Okay, I'll just leave everything else. Right? I'm not going to open bank account because somebody, or a credit card because somebody else is giving me 2% extra. This, I don't want to optimize. I think I think the word for that is that, right? A lot of people I see, they're trying to optimize everything to the, like, okay, let me jump to this and I will do this 1% better here. No, I don't. I don't want to do that. That concept of satisfying, right? This is good enough. Let me just just live with it, right? And it will, once you put it on autopilot, that part is taken care of. So let me use my time for something else. So that's what I've done. When I come to simple, again, it's a struggle, right? It's easier said than done, right? Some new shiny stuff, the world around us is there to pull us in, right? Some new shiny stuff will come up, right? And will try to draw us in. So
That's right. And I think I
it's
also
that
remember
stuff.
you talking about the sleep test, right?
Oh yeah,
Something
yeah,
that
yeah.
disturbs your sleep. I think your question is it really worth it? Even if it
Correct, correct,
generates
correct.
a slightly higher return or some gives you a slightly better benefit, is it really worth it? So that idea of
It's I think again true for true for so many areas, right? Like, is there some is there some work, is there some money, is there some relationship which is causing your stomach to churn, right? You intuitively know it, right? It's not even like you intuitively know it, right? If something is good, and that's where I think all these things are very personal, right? Somebody can sleep very well with a high, people talk of risk and all the mathematical formula and everything. I think risk is completely personal. Somebody can sleep very well with with a three stock portfolio or by investing in FNO, right? More power to them. I will pull my hair out whatever little bit is left you know by doing those things. I'm not going to do that, right? I mean, why would I suffer because of that, right? So yeah, so you kind of just drop stuff which which makes your stomach churn, which causes you to sleep, and then you're just left with those things which you just improve your quality of life. So I think simplicity becomes an outcome, as you just start mulling and thinking over it. I think, as they call it, yeah, as you reflect on your own experiences, right? That's where these things kind of just fall in place, right?
that's right. And I think that
Yeah.
idea of optimizing for happiness and good sleep, and instead of optimizing always for return, I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
an idea worth remembering and practicing. Uh, in the previous episode, and I think see when you're talking about saying no to a lot of things, a lot of shiny stuff which has come to your life, right? And again, optimizing for peace and a better internal happiness and sleep, good night sleep, more important than trying to achieve the next bit of return. I think it's also a matter of being internally contented in life, right? So contented, not again in a negative sense that you don't want to pursue new things, but content in the sense
Right.
that okay, this is good enough for me. So uh, I have been thinking a lot about this idea, and I've been
Right.
asking a lot of wise people questions around contentment. So, in my previous episode of the podcast, I was talking to Swanand Kelkar, who left me with a wonderful equation of contentment. So, I just wanted to
Hmm.
share with you. He said that that equation is what you have divided by what you want, right? So I
Correct,
think this is
correct,
an
correct.
intensely practical formula of living. Most of us, or many of us, go about our lives desperately trying to increase the numerator by working hard,
Right.
by spending, working, spending, and so on, right? And so forth. But the hedonic treadmill makes this a pure futility, right? So
Correct.
satisfaction basically always escapes our grasp. The secret which I understand to contentment is to raise the final value, right, of the equation. It is to
Correct, correct, correct.
focus on reducing the denominator of what you want, right? So the fewer wants
Correct.
that are screaming inside your brain and dividing attention, the more
Correct,
peace
correct.
and satisfaction you will be left with, right?
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on contentment? And despite it being a daily struggle to feel contented, how are you actually trying to achieve it, right? This is especially given that you and me, we are in the investing space where in the struggle for alpha generation and greater wealth
Oh
creation,
yeah, yeah.
contentment is generally hard to work towards. So what's your mantra here? And have you thought about this very important contentment question of how much is enough?
Right. No, initially I did not, and again I struggle with it. I don't know how much others, but I struggle with it all the time. Right. It comes with personality also, right? If you are, if you're the type A, I want to do well in life. It's if you start off your life, with the whole achievement focus, we get drilled as our kids also, right? If you were content as a kid, and I used to, I would, if you got bad grades in school, and you said to your parents, I'm content, you know what, I'm getting 75%, I'm very happy. What would happen, right? Nice, a tight slap, or something like that. So you're trained not to be content in the beginning of your life, right? I mean, nobody, way we grew up, I think you mentioned earlier in the podcast, right, that it was a scarcity driven mindset, right? We were all like, the thing which I think we were all uh, drilled into right at the beginning was, it's a race, right? You have to run hard, otherwise you will not make a living. You have to be first in your class, you have to work hard, you have to get a good job, this that. That's a total opposite of being content, right? I mean, and it has its place, right? The problem I think I've seen, at least in my own case also, is that it's not like a light switch we can turn off. Okay, and you know what, today I have reached my goals, now nobody is pushing me, so let me switch the put the turn the button off. It does not happen, right? If we were trained to be the driven and whatever, achievement oriented, if you may, right, in the beginning of our life, it just continues. So it just requires a lot of work and reflection. At least that's what I've felt. It's a work in process. And then I kind of look back and I think, right, okay, when I was starting off, I had these goals in life. I would do this, I would do this. I've tried to make a point of noting those goals down then, right? I used to, I've always written online. I used to write in a diary here and there, and then I started journaling very, very regularly. So I would, look back at at some of the stuff which I had written, let's say in 2008 and 9. I said, this is my goal. I would want to achieve when I hit this age. I should have this much of my net worth, etc., etc. And then you realize when you have reached that goal, question is, what now? What, right? Do you still want to? You know, so in my case, the way I think about it is that I love the process of doing it, right? Like, for example, if I am investing, I love the process of investing. The numbers have already been met. So let's keep the goal part of it aside. I don't, I'm not now looking at, I'm at X, I want to hit 2X, because 2X will not do anything for me, at least personally. Again, it's very individual specific. But what do I love a part of it? I love the part of learning. I love the part of improving myself. So I'll just do that, right? I won't chase myself for a number, but I'll do that. So at least that reduces the level of angst, and makes me feel more content that, okay, I'm not doing it for a number, I'm doing for this. Second is, I think, it also is, you also get influenced by people around you. So same thing, right? I was saying, right, if your spouse, your family, especially in my case, if they are very content, and they are happy, like my wife keeps reminding me, right, we have enough, right? You don't have to keep running around. So if you have, if your better half, or your family around you keeps giving you this reminder that you can tone it down, right? There's no lion chasing you in the back. You tend to slow down. It comes with age, it comes with people around you, and then it comes by self reflection. I think we can all read, but it's reading is one thing, but I think you have to really sit down, think over it, right? At least that has been in my case. And then you have to kind of do your own self therapy. Like, why do you want to keep running? What are you trying to achieve? Then when you do that and you reflect, you realize that a lot of these, a lot of the sayings are correct, but you have to peel the onion yourself, right? You have to figure out. I think a lot of people who are running are not doing it because they want a specific amount of money. We all know investors, right, who live exactly the same life they were living 20 years back, and now they are like 100x richer, right? But they still travel by the same car, they do the same thing. They're not running after the money, they're doing something else. So I think it comes down to that, right? It's again work in progress. So as you drop stuff off and you simplify stuff, that's the same thing we spoke about, right? Simplicity. As you start dropping stuff out, you feel that sense of contentment, and then you have to keep reminding yourself. I do that every other day, right? When those gears start running again, I said, okay, you know what? Calm down, take it easy, right? It's there is, you're not going to die poor tomorrow, right? It'll all be fine. So
That's right. I think also it comes with age and experience
oh
as well.
yeah,
So there's a concept called the happiness curve, right? Which tells you
correct,
that you are probably the happiest when you are around like 15 or 20 years of age, and then that curves actually takes a big downturn shift,
correct,
and that is what causes the midlife crisis, as they say, right?
correct,
Till you're 40 and 45, and then again after 45, that curves really moves up, and you're again
correct,
among the happiest that you've ever been after you cross your 55, 60 years of age. That
correct,
is what the research proves. And if you I think correlate that with the work that we're doing in life, or things that we start accumulating in life, right? That happens somewhere starting 2025, and that is where the curves
correct,
actually falls down, right? So we are accumulating a lot of stuff, but we are not feeling so happy in life, right? We are
Correct,
always
correct,
running
correct.
after more and more, right? And 45 is that we are at that crossroad where we are not sure whether we have enough or not. And we also look back at a life and say, oh, 40, 45 years have passed by and I have not really achieved something and I still need to run
Achieve
faster,
something.
faster,
Yeah, yeah,
faster, right?
yeah.
So we keep
Correct,
adding. So if I were to just divide that life into two phases, like first half and second half, first half is all about addition, right? And we keep adding stuff, experiences, people in our lives. And second half is all about subtraction. We realize that most of
correct,
the stuff that we added in the first half was not worth it, right? So I
correct,
think
correct,
that subtraction and that need for understanding that most of the stuff is not required in my life to remain contented, to remain happy, that causes that happiness to increase, that causes that feeling of abundance to increase. So I think rather than teaching people about what contentment is, I think as with all other stuff, right, and it's a personal experience that really
correct,
leads you to tell you whether you get contented or not. And there's no, as you mentioned, there's no switch which you can turn on and off. It's your environment, it's your age, your experience, your life
correct.
experience, and the way you look at the world that really tells you or really helps you understand that entire idea of contentment, right? If you
Right. Again, I
survive
think
till that
you
age.
if you yeah you if you just reflect on it, and I mean there is, you can look around and you can see, right, people where they are. I've been a big proponent of, we do that in investing. We learn from others, right, all the time, right? I don't think I've had any original thoughts as far as investing is concerned. And then you realize, why not for other areas of life? Look at people who are ahead of you, right? I think I like this entire concept. Look at people who are ahead of you, our senior citizens. Who do you look at? You see people who are much older than in their 70s, 80s, 90s. Who are the people who are happy and content? And then work backwards from them. What is it that making? Are the richest people the most content, or are there people with reasonable means, and who have a very fulfilling and a very active social circle? Are they more happy, right? And then as you look around, you can learn the same fashion. You look around and you learn from other investors. You can do for other areas of life also, right? From your own parents, from other senior citizens, right? And by that age you realize, right, that if you had three cars, it hasn't made their life any more fulfilling than if they were just walking around, right? So I think that, yeah, I do that same thing, right? Just look around, just reflect on your own experiences. But why learn everything from your own experience, right? Why not on almost every aspect of life? Just look around, right? Read, listen, watch, observe, right? uh, don't have to discover everything.
On your own. Of course, yes, you don't reinvent the wheel again and again. Uh,
Correct.
on on to my next question, a slightly longish one. It's on
Right,
the idea of survival again, something which
right,
is such an important topic to think about, reflect in your life as an investor and otherwise as well. Like Charlie Munger says that all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I will not
right,
go there. So the idea is survival, right? So one of the most important lessons which I have learned in my life as an investor uh, is that any investor, whether individual investor or you or me, we are not the market. And also that earning the long term returns of the market is never in our control. But what is in our
right,
control is managing the risks that we take and avoiding the ruin, avoiding
right,
the disaster, avoiding getting killed. Right, like Peter Bernstein wrote in his brilliant book Against the Gods. He wrote, and I quote, "Survival is the only road to riches." Let me say that again.
right,
Survival is the only road to riches. You should try to maximize return only if losses would not threaten your survival and if you have a compelling future need for the extra gains you might earn. So I believe that trying to avoid the ruin the stock market system enforces upon people who disregard its working is a very rational thing. But believing
right,
that you can beat the system at it by playing the game mindlessly, I think that's not rational at all. You
right,
also wrote in a post in 2020 when we were in the early stage of the COVID pandemic that if
right,
your idea of investing is to achieve your financial goals, then the first priority is to ensure that you don't incur a massive loss from which you cannot recover. And the
right,
older you are, the higher the risk. And in investing,
correct,
there is no finish line and gold medal at the end of it. The end goal is survival and meeting your financial goals. So, how do you think about this idea of survival as an end goal for an investor? And what are your own survival tactics against your own behavior and also against the
right,
market that throws one cannonball at us after another?
right. So you're right. I think I've seen, and you see this common thread among all the different successful investors always traders, right? I've been, you would think, okay, traders who the successful ones, right, would be those swashbuckling, what we see in this TV series and in movies and all of that, right, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. That cannot be farther from the truth. Whether it's investors, whether it is traders, anybody operating in the stock market, people have either learned it the hard way, or they've it's it just happens by natural selection. If you do not respect the risk, you will get you'll get blown up a couple of times, and then you'll be out of the market. So it's like it's the more as I've expanded my horizons, I've read how traders invest, how others invest. Risk, I think most of them are looking at it all the time. But again, I think some of it, it's not that I have not lost money or I have not made mistakes. I think the problem around survival or these risks is also that it's not just that it can take you out of the game. It is very damaging mentally also. We were talking about compounding, right? No matter what you do, if your R is zero at any one point of time, I think we've all read, right, Buffett and others say the same thing. You will be back to square one, right? You'll go back to zero. So a slower compounding will work far better than trying to, and it's always that R which you're trying to push, right? And that's where if you were to chart it, I think at least the academics have it right. The risk does not actually increase linearly. It's actually, I think, you can call it a convex or whatever, like it's exponential, right? That extra 5% maybe raises the risk. Again, it's not mathematical, it's just you can just intuitively understand that last 5 or 10% is raising your risk 4 times, right? Again, same thing, right? People, returns are visible, risk is not, right? So people think, oh, you know what, whatever I'm making, I don't have, my survivability is not at risk. My thumb rule has been this, right? I if I think I can take X risk, I would actually want to keep it at 0.8x. Because if I, my own personal observation, and I've seen investors also, others, a lot of my subscribers and everybody, you think you can take risk, but you know what, you cannot, right? I mean, everybody thinks they can take X amount of risk, but the moment somebody, we have a 25-30% drawdown on our portfolios, I think I can safely say, including me, people cry mommy at that time. Like, everybody's jittery. People get jittery when there is a 5% drop, right? Forget about 30% drop. At 30% drop, people just, a lot of people just panic. I've seen that happen, multiple times in life. So if you think you can take X risk, I would say, you should just dial it down to 0.5x, or maybe dial it down to zero point 0.3. And the way I've done it is, let me go way below the threshold, I think, and then I can always dial it up, right? And I've been surprised at how much less risk I can tolerate. I think I can tolerate X, and I think I've been surprised that no, I can't tolerate X. I can only tolerate 0.7x. So tools are the standard. I think it's more of a behavioral issue rather than anything else. But for me, the tools have been standard. It's diversification, right, across asset classes, ensuring that I have enough. I can live through it, right? Like, I do not want my financial risk to be such that I cannot work through it, right? Like, let's say there's a big drawdown in the market, I panic. I think I was reading this very good, I think, I don't remember, but this quote, right, that risk management is where you can see through the volatility without losing your psychological composure, right? So somebody can manage maybe a 40% drawdown, and somebody can manage 10%. The person with a 10% drawdown threshold should not look at a person who can manage 40%, because he will lose his sleep, he will panic at the right time or at the wrong time. So I think risk, again, personal thing, look at what you can sleep with, right? And how do you test that? Go slightly below the edge and see how are you feeling about it. I know that sleep test sounds, a little, superficial, but it's a very good test. Intuitively your subconscious is telling you where you are approaching the limits of your risk, and then dial it down, right? Dial it down to a point where you if you see that kind of a drawdown, you say, okay, you know what, I know this can happen and I can live through it. So, and again, do it earlier in life, right? Do it when you're in your 20s, touch that boundary and see what happened. And I've done that once or twice, and I realize, okay, this is my threshold, I do not want to go. And then as you grow older, you want to take the usual manage, you want to manage it, and I would say, it goes beyond just money, right? Same thing is also about your health, right? Like I know, a lot of investors keep talking about compounding, but what's the biggest period of, the biggest, if you're just thinking of money, right? If you were an economic animal, and none of us are, right? And you wanted to make the biggest amount of money, at the end of life. I know, like nobody takes it with them, but let's even assume if that is the goal, right? It's a time, it's T, right? And where does that come from? It comes from being healthy and being able to survive, right? If you are, unfortunately, if you're dead at 50, you're done, right? Everything is done at that point of time. So it, that component has to be there, right? Health, your mental health, your physical health, and then managing risks, whether it is personal, whether it's financial or whether it's financial risk. I mean, I know, this may, I mean, we have seen, right? There are investors who do not take care of their health, and then they suffer so much towards later part of their life, right? We have seen quite a few big investors also around us, right? So I think it's multifaceted. We need to be thinking about it, and I think I like Nassim Taleb. I think, is writing, much, that has influenced me a lot, from, how I want to approach it. He talks about risk management quite a bit, but in different domains, right? So I think that's a good area to read from.
And I think the idea, as you mentioned, is to try as much as you can to avoid multiplying by zero, right? So, if your wealth is 100 or a million, and but your health is zero, right? You anyway are zero, right? And vice
Exactly,
versa.
right,
So I think
and vice versa.
any zero in life, as much as you can, try to avoid. Though not everything is in our control, but I think it's
Correct.
entirely about what you want to avoid as much as longer
Same
as you
same
can.
thing for relationships, right? You don't want to be the richest guy with decent health, but absolutely no relationships, right? People just hate you, right? And you can all, so it's the same thing, right? You bring a good point, right? It's like, it's not a mathematical equation, but if these are the different components, if you maximize one and you completely minimize something else, right? We know of people, right, who, I think you shared this quote, right? That people who are very, very focused on their career or money, and they maximize that variable, but they then at later in life they realize that, the other aspects of life, I think, I don't know where I was reading this, but, a lot of times people have this regret later in life, and we've read it actually with Warren Buffett also. At a later point, he felt, he had spent too much time with his on investing and everything, and he neglected his family. So, uh, you know the moment you realize, why not start balancing it out? Not easy, right? I think I remember this very good, kind of a description somebody gave, right? That it's with work, with investing, you see the results right away, right? So it's very magnetic, it's very, it draws you a bit, right? I work very hard, I get promoted end of the year. I work very hard, I get an alpha. With everything else, right? Like, you bring in the concept of compounding with health, with family, right? End of the year, your kid is not going to give you a nice little certificate saying you were a good dad, right? Or you're not going to get a certificate from your doctor saying you were 20% extra, and you know healthier, and you've had an alpha of 3%. So you tend to neglect all these things, right? Because there's no immediate gratification on these things. Whereas obviously with money, with career, immediate gratification. Again, not that you can do, you can always balance it out, right? And then some people, for them, they don't care about other things. They say, I want to maximize money, which is fine, right? If that is what your goal is.
No, I think sometimes that turns into a very unfortunate regret that you look back and you are not able to change anything because
Okay.
time passes, right? So
The-
yeah, please continue.
no, a good point, right? That word regret, you've heard this concept from Jeff Bezos, right? Regret minimization at 80, right? Why not apply that across all? I think you were talking about a common thread, right? And that's what I keep thinking about, right? How do I minimize regret at 80? First is obviously live till 80. Right? And then, how do you minimize, right? So that's the thing, right? Look around you, people who have been successful, right? 60, 65, 70, top of their career. What is the regret they have? Okay, work backwards. How can you avoid that? And then just look at across all the areas of life, right?
That's right. So I was reading this interview of Mr. A.M. Nayak, who headed L&T earlier, right, and who stepped down
Right.
from his executive responsibilities in 2017, which is like 50 plus years after he joined the company as a junior engineer.
Right.
Pretty long time. So at
Right.
retirement, he was asked if there was anything he would have done differently if he had a chance, and his reply that I felt sad about the first time when I read it, and even now, and he replied something like this that. Today I can say this, and this is an exact quote from his interview when someone asked him about what will you change in your life. So he said, and I quote, "Today I can say this, although without changing the basic path which I have taken. I gave zero time to my wife and no time to my children. They feel they did not get the affection of their dad. So if I were to restart my life, I would make sure they get due share of my quality time. I think I would not deviate from what my mind says, and that is work for the nation, build a strong India. But I would also not go mad as to totally ignore the family. I would give them
Correct, correct.
some
Yeah.
time to them. So now I am now trying to make it up and say that in the final phase of my life, let me whitewash my sins. Now I've come to learn that the sacrifice we make in our pursuit of greater career, better career,
Mhm.
greater wealth, more wealth, these sacrifices may not be immediately apparent, right? The cost of neglected
Correct,
friendships and relationships, they often emerge gradually with individual realizing that the
correct,
hollowness of their success when they just look around and they find fewer friends to share it with, right?
correct,
So in the pursuit of wealth, however, it is essential, I think, to remember that the true riches extend beyond monetary success, right? So
correct.
friendships, personal connections, they are priceless treasures that offer support. They offer shared experiences. They offer emotional
Right.
fulfillment, like we said, right? I strongly believe in this, and I may be wrong, but these bonds should not be sacrificed on the altar of financial ambition. So my question to you on this, Rohit, again continuing with the same discussion, how has been your personal journey on these aspects, and how have your thoughts and perspectives changed from say a
Right.
20-year-old Rohit to now someone who is like in mid 40s, right, early 50s? So
So,
how? Yeah.
you're right. I think we all go through the same journey. For me, at the age of 20, it was okay, all about money. Right. Okay. Compound. Again, I came from, I think I shared this, right? I did not start off in that same fashion, but, when with all these events in life, in family and everything, my perspective became was, you get into this mindset that, uh, you suffer through the lack of money, and then you never want to. It's that saying, right? I think which Munger uses, right? That once you've touched a hot whatever, cat has touched a hot something, it will not even touch the cold stove or something like that, right? So doodh ka jala, right? Something like that. So it was like, okay, I have to ensure that money is not something which, for which I have to suffer, and my family has to go through that. But then I think as you grow older, and as I started thinking about, so again, this would not have been any original thoughts. You kind of read across and you see this coming up, started coming up, this word which you just used, right? Wealth, right? And as I have started thinking about it, and again, I journal every day, I write. So as I have thought about wealth, I started thinking, okay, what is wealth, right? And money is one part of it, like you just mentioned, right? Money is one part of it, health is one part of it, relationships are one part of it, your own mental health is one part of it, happiness, contentment. So again, same analytical way, some people intuitively get this, they are lucky to be born with this sense right from the beginning, and they balance it out. I'm not that lucky. I've been very single minded, focused on one area, but then as you grow older, you start realizing that, if as these are all different aspects, and how can how can you maximize, if you have to maximize wealth, you have to maximize all the aspects of it. Now I think where did I read this, but somewhere I read that the society is structured in a way where it it forces, not forces, but it encourages you to be this very unidimensional. I mean, look at people who are lauded in media all the time, right? Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, all the top CEOs, right? Because they have done an exceptional, they have these kind of exceptional achievements cannot happen unless you're completely focused on what you're doing, right? You cannot be the CEO of a company and a successful one if you don't spend 80 hours of your 80 hours a week and completely focused on it. I think it will not happen. That's the nature of competition, right? If you don't do it, somebody else does it. So all these people are lauded all the time, they're given, like they're the most successful people, but you never hear of people who are balanced, who did a reasonable job, obviously, as far as their career are concerned, but also had balance in their personal life, family life. Like nobody gives an award saying good dad this year, right? Who gets that award, right? Or you had a content. So often what happens is when you're young and you're growing, you think, oh, you know what, your role model should be this guy who has, we see it in the Western media even more, like in the US media also, right? Where this CEO will boast, I sleep 6 hours a day, I do not have any friends, I do not have any family, all that I've done is I have built 15 companies and I've worked 90 hours a week. And that is you have biographies written about these people, and they are lauded and all that, which is fine. That's the goal they did, right? So we tend to end up, we gravitate to those role models, right? Because others are all hidden. But I think the only way to get around is that, what, at a certain point you realize what is it that you want, right? It's fine that these people are extremely, successful in their whatever parameter they have, right? But do you want to, follow that path? And when you start reflecting and you start thinking that no, you don't, then that's where, so again, where I think is that all of this requires time, right? All these other areas, more than money, they require time, right? Your time is the currency for all these other areas of wealth, whether it's family, relationships, nothing new, right? So you have to really, at least in my case, I have to really remind myself and pull time out, right? Saying, okay, you know what? I know I'm getting very excited by this new stock idea or by this thing, but I have to, like consciously say, no, you know what? I'm not going to spend time on this, and I'm going to do something else. So it's a struggle. I would not say, like I'm the last person who can, claim, some zen, like, this thing. I have to all the time, remind myself that I should spend more time on this. I should do this. Maybe at some point it'll become natural, but today it is not. I have to consciously think about it.
That's true, and I think it's also entirely about what what's your north star all about, right? What's that inner compass pointing to, right? So, like you talked about people being unidimensional, and also people who are balanced, right? So there won't be any talk or books written about people who are balanced because the story is not going to sell, right? It's
Yeah.
only
So
people who are.
and again, it's all individual life experiences. Also, I know my own parents were extremely balanced. They were never, focused on just the monetary aspect of it. But you're not always like your parents. But at some point, I think that comes with age. You start realizing that, okay, time to maybe make, as some of the other goals have been met, right? Do you still want to keep chasing them, right? I think that's the thing, right? If your financial goals have been met, if you just think very rationally about it, having the 2x net worth, is it going to make your life better? And if the answer comes back saying no, then you can think, okay, let me at least take some part of my time and devote it, again, just from a very logical rational standpoint. What will increase the total wealth? 2x the money or the other aspects of life? And then if the answer comes back that yes, oh, you know what, smarter way would be to actually spend more time around, some of the other things. And then you realize, what, okay, so that's the part. So again, it's again a very numerical way of looking at it, but it works for me. Some people intuitively just know it, right? Or they can, they're spiritually more tuned to that. No, for me, everything has to be has to be thought through and has to be worked out. Doesn't come Nothing comes naturally for me, at least.
That's right. I remember in some relation that scene from that movie of Amitabh Bachchan and Shashi Kapoor, where Amitabh Bachchan says, "Right, मेरे पास गाड़ी है, दौलत है, बंगला
Correct.
है, तुम्हारे पास क्या है? मेरे पास माँ है." Right. So
That has become such a joke, but in a way, that's
that is
true,
true.
right?
That is true. So I think, yeah, completely different perspectives, but entirely driven by what that inner compass of the person tells you, of what
Correct,
really
correct,
matters
correct.
to you, right? So, but I think
Right.
this idea, this concept of wealth versus time, right? That I think we've talked about otherwise as well. And I think it was the philosopher Henry Thoreau who said that the price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it, right?
Correct, correct,
I have long believed that accumulating wealth should not lead to a never-ending pursuit of more, but rather it should serve as a tool to purchase time. And this is not something which I have started to believe after having sort of achieved my financial freedom. It's like way earlier that I learned about this idea from people I learned this idea from. So there's some people I
correct,
respected, and they taught me about the importance of accumulating wealth, but it should not be a never-ending pursuit, right? But as a
correct,
tool to purchase time, right? What I'm exactly mean by this is that we should leverage our financial resources to attain freedom, independence, and the ability
correct.
to focus on what truly matters in life. So over
Right.
time, the goal shifts from amassing wealth endlessly to using wealth intelligently, right? Ultimately, giving
Correct, correct. And
the
that's
most
tough one.
valuable
Yeah.
commodity, right? Which is time. It's,
Yeah.
it's actually a very
Oh,
tough
yeah,
one
yeah.
because time, you cannot put a number to time, right? But you can put a number to wealth, right? So
Correct, correct.
you too are a believer in this philosophy of using the surplus from wealth creation as a means to buy time, right? So my question is,
Right.
how have you managed to exchange wealth for more precious time in your life, and what lessons can others draw from this exchange?
Again, same thing, like as you mentioned, right? Come to the same conclusion, but nothing comes to me naturally, right? I'm I'm not wired, mentally in that fashion. It's always been, run after stuff, right? So for me, it's only self reflection and thinking about it, that these things have. And again, when you read others talk about it, that's where it, I think, I don't remember where these thoughts come from, but often, it's big when you read other people, maybe the writings which you have put, right? I followed you also. And when you read the same things from other people, you later on you realize it was some original thought, but I don't think it was an original thought. Would have definitely come from you, from others, seeing my own family also. So I, the way, more than, I mean, I've kind of looked at it from from a multiple aspects. One is, right, that if kind of just work backwards, right? Are there things which I don't enjoy? And there are a few things, right, on a personal level which I don't enjoy. Like, I don't want to do these chores or these errands. And I like this entire concept which this guy brought up once way back. His name is Naval Ravikant. He's a venture capitalist, in the Bay Area, and he brings up this concept of an hourly rate. And I've used this quite often, right? And he talks of it from a wealth creation standpoint, but I think it's also from a wealth management standpoint. He says, what, think of yourself as you will work, let's say, 2000 hours a year, right? What is the income you are making? And you give it an arbitrary number. You say, what, I'm worth $150 an hour. So you, from an Indian perspective, you can put whatever number you want. Let's say 1000 rupees an hour, right? That is my hourly rate. So the way, again, very very, again, mathematical, but again, are there things in your life which, and I know this, most of the people don't like it to do it this way, because we are again brought up from a scarcity mindset. So there are other things, like, you would not put $1000 an hour, when you're taking care of, or you're spending time with your kids. That is stupid, right? You're not think I'm saying of economic activities. Let's say you have to get something changed, replaced, fixed, whatever it is, right? Is this worth, if you can get somebody for 500 rupees an hour versus spending your time, which is valued at 1000 rupees an hour. I just think of it, right? Let me get it done. Now, in the, most of the times, what do people do? They'll say, oh, hey, I'm going to lose 500 rupees. But no, you're not losing. There is an opportunity cost of 1000 rupees an hour. So I think in those terms. So there are things which, I obviously don't want to spend time, because time being limited and fungible, I want to use it on other stuff, right? I mean, you can only have so much time in the day, right? If you want to spend time on your health, family, and investing and career, then you have to take other stuff also. That's the direction I've gone in, right? Like, and which is where I was coming. We were talking about simplicity, right? Again, it ties into that. I do not want to chase 50 things, and everywhere I have to spend time. And if my time is this valuable, right? So not only from a mental stress standpoint, even from a rational using the time perspective also. So that's what I've done, right? Take out activities, which do not add value. And that actually frees up a lot of time, right? Again, I'm not talking of entertainment. I'm not talking of spending time with friends, families. Those are things which bring joy to life, right? Everything is not like dollars and cents, but there are a lot of things, right? Do you want to go to some store to save 10% on some whatever, bag of groceries or something? Like, what's the point, right? I mean, if you're not in that situation. So those are things which I have done, obviously, to look at it from a, from a time perspective, right? Let's, how do you save time, right? Other than that, again, just narrow down the list of things which I want to do, right? Is this worth it, right? I mean, is this going to add value? There has to be some value to it. So again, on a personal level, I keep I plan out my week. Usually in the beginning of the week, I will allocate time. This much I will spend on work. This much I will spend this, that. Again, a very very quantitative way of doing it, but I tend to do that, right? So that's some simple stuff, right? Just knock off stuff, which does not add value. And I'm sure, there is still, I end up wasting time on some silly stuff, but that's fine. Something should be for fun, right? You can't put a
That is
number
true. I
on
think
everything.
this is one lesson I think which is very hard to come by for me over the years. Like over the years of running Safal Niveshak, I've tried so many times or thought so many times about hiring someone to take care of the newsletter, the mailer, the editing, and
Correct.
writing the book. Not in terms of writing the book, but editing the stuff, right? Laying out, packing the book, sending, because I self-publish it, right? But somehow I've
Correct.
always failed to do that, despite having read Naval Ravikant said that hourly rate kind of a thing, of thinking of doing it on my own. When I look
Oh, it's
back,
tough.
yeah, it's actually tough, right? So I'll still take care of the tech of my website. I'll write the newsletter. I'll actually paste the newsletter in the newsletter software. I'll send it. I'll ensure that it gets delivered. Right. When it comes to writing a book, I'll write it. I'll illustrate
Correct.
it. I'll lay it out in a software. Right. I'll also pack the book one by one, send it to people who ordered the book and people whom I want to send
Correct.
the book to. Right.
It's
When I
tough. It's
look
tough.
back,
I agree.
it's tough. One thing is, I understand it's about delegating, and I've also been told by my wife and other well wishers who say that you should delegate these things to others so that you get more time to write more content and write more
Correct.
books and do better things in life. But somehow I've enjoyed this process entirely of doing things on my own without being a control freak, but doing things on my own, the entire process and doing everything. It's like the Zen story, right? Before enlightenment, you chop wood and you carry water. After enlightenment, you still chop wood and you carry water. So I'm still
Yeah.
chopping
No,
wood
if
and
you
carrying
enjoy,
water.
definitely.
That
Yeah.
is true.
Correct.
That is like you mentioned,
Yeah.
right? Things have to be done for fun, and you don't think about this
Yeah.
when you are spending time with your kids. So all my work is like my child. So I think that's
No,
lesson
I
has
mean,
not come.
if I look at it that way, I've highlighted this concept with the first thing, which is my blog. Like, the amount of time I've spent writing, and if I look at the ROI on that, it's like, it's like it's horrible. I could have actually gone and I could have dug some ditches somewhere, and I would have made more in an hourly rate. So not everything is around that, but I know there are things which I don't like to do. The only sole purpose I do it is because, you know what, it is expensive right away. I'm not looking at the time aspect of it. You said buy time, right? The moment you use this mental construct, intuitively, you should save time, but let's say you use this mental construct, my time is worth X dollars an hour, or X rupees an hour, or X whatever currency you want to think of, right? And uh, you look at the cost which is it, and then they're like, so I've had this conversation with my wife, and she's like, okay, you know what, I like, for example, I don't like to do any repairs in the house. I don't want to fix a TV, I don't want to fix a this and that. First of all, I'm very mechanically challenged. Second, you know what, it'll take a lot of time. And, I don't want to do it. Right? And so there are a lot of these areas where at least, very initially you can just knock them off. Right? You can say, I don't want to do these 10 things. Luckily, I've been in some areas, I've been very good at that. Like in my own advisory, my friend and my colleague, who runs this with me, my partner, right? He takes care of a lot of this. So he frees up my time on this, right? So, and again, in that sense, both he and my wife, they're very similar in their, thought process. They are like, they're far more contented people. They don't want to run around. They'll take things, easy and light. So I think it helps if you have friends and family who are like, who are not like you, right? You don't want to type a hard driven, maybe that's okay, right? Sometimes, those couples are compatible, but if you are wanting these, if you have these goals in life, and you are yourself type A, then you want your spouse not to be type. But if you know what, if both of you like this life, hard charging life, then you know what I mean, who is anyone to say, which life is good or bad, right? You know it's all individual, right?
Yeah, looking at
It's
the
all
ROI.
individual.
So sometimes you define that ROI as wanting return on investment. Sometimes that ROI becomes return on inner peace, right? So the amount of peace
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you
time,
generate from
right? I mean,
time.
I I, I wrote this sometime, right? I wrote it from a very investing standpoint. Said return on time invested. Like, some people, the simple thumb rule I used, right? Like, if I'm going to spend X number of, I use the example of arbitrage versus, the steady long term investing. I figure out, a good company. I know that this company will do well for 10, 5, 7 years, whatever it is, right? And I have to just do a maintenance kind of a review every couple of months. No, return on time invested on that stock is much lesser versus, running around on FNO, or running around on some arbitrage situation. I may make slightly more in the short term, but you know what, the time I've spent to do that, very high, right? So when you say buying time, I think it also is true from an investing standpoint. Look at what effort you have to put to generate that return. Is that X percentage return or whatever that? I wrote a post quite some time back where people talk about, becoming full-time investors, and I said that specifically, right? That, it's overrated. How much alpha will you get? Look at the time. If you went and did an SIP in some of the mutual funds or in the index, you will make an X amount of return. Even if you beat that by 10% per annum, and which is a tough goal, you cannot beat your hourly income rate for the first decade or more. So if you think, you want to become a full time investor, and it's a financially a smart decision. I'm not talking of the passion or the interest you bring to it, but if it is a financially a smart decision, you are completely mistaken. It is not a financially smart decision to become a full time investor with a small corpus and you stop working. So if you just do the basic math, right? Forget about, you see somebody who comes on TV and he says, he made a killing of 10 crores. Forget all of that nonsense. You know, average, experience, or average, returns people get. So
To change the path a bit, Rohit, I want to like get your insights on this idea of learning, right? So there's a myth that learning is for young people, but I believe in the
right,
proverb that says that it's what you learn after you know it that is all that counts.
right,
I was recently reading this note from John Gardner, which was shared by a good friend, Saurabh Madan. So John Gardner is a noted American novelist and essayist who wrote this
right,
beautiful essay in 1994, which was titled "The Road to Self Renewal," wherein he wrote, and I quote, "The middle years are great, great learning years. Even the years past the middle years. I took on a new
right,
job after my 76th birthday, and I'm still learning. Learn all your life, learn from your failures, learn from your successes. When you hit a spell of trouble, always ask, what is it trying to teach me? The lessons are not always happy ones, but they keep coming." You have
correct,
yourself written about continuous learning and evolution in your post, and I know your love for being a lifelong learner, which echoes the idea of knowledge as a journey and not a destination. And your
right.
purpose of self evolution, as far as learning goes, reminds me of a quote from Socrates who said, "I am the wisest man alive, for I know one thing, that is that I know nothing." So,
Right,
my question is, how has this philosophy of continuous learning shaped your personal and professional growth, both in life as an
right.
investor? And what advice on learning would you offer to young people and investors who are just starting out in their careers in investing or outside of it?
A couple of points. I think I realized that I love learning only at a later point when I started connecting the dots. You don't realize initially, right? I mean, school years are usually the worst time because you're forced to do that. But even then, I used to like reading books on science and all that, and you just do that as fun, right? Only at a later point I realized that learning, reading, in finance, right, it's like a double, it's like a double benefit, right? I anyway enjoy doing this. It's same thing like writing, like you do also, right? You've also been a learner, you write, and then you realize, what, I like this, I would do this even if nobody paid anything, right? But you know what, so I'll keep doing it, and if the money comes, it's an extra bonus. So same thing, right? For me, I used to, I always love to read, and then over time you realize that is actually reading was a more of a proxy of the way of learning, right? Because you only got books at that time, and now you have videos and podcasts and everything. So you only at a later point I realized that it was, I love to learn, and that is what kind of was the interest right from a very early age, and I don't know where it came from, but that was there, right? Uh, I my just my personal view is that everybody loves to. A lot of people love to learn, but it's not. Unfortunately, I think. So let me take it back. I think I've seen people who know. A lot of people do not actually like to learn, and it's not consciously, but I've seen a lot of my friends and other people around me that after they come out of school and after working, people only learn when they're forced to learn. Like for example, you're working and there is a training program or there is some new technology once comes out. Not I know that a lot of investors and people we talk to are a love of learning, but that does not seem to be a very a very common a theme which I see. A lot of people don't, they just get into passive modes. My personal view is that if you're keen on learning, it just keeps your mind active. It you just feel younger, right? I mean, I for want of anything else, right? Again, personally, I've never. No, I don't. I think you just mentioned about age, right? Uh, Luckily, I think I've somehow internalized this point that I don't care who I learn from. Just because I've been doing this thing for 20 years does not mean that if some young guy who is 25 years old has something intelligent to teach me, I cannot learn from that person. For me, anybody and everybody, whether it is a deceased 2000-year-old philosopher, if he or she can teach me, I can learn from them. If it's a 25-year-old, actually in the last couple of years, that's what has happened for me, right? I've started looking at some other areas of investing, at some other new hobbies I've picked up like poker, And all these people, as you grow older, your teachers are getting younger, right? Because there are these new people who are coming in also, who have a lot to teach you. So at least, and there's no shortage of stuff, right? So there is no excuse for not being able to learn. You can learn at any point of time. You can learn from anyone. But I think the single most, I think, determinant is your own desire for it, right? And I think, when you read any spiritual document, books or anything, you see that, right? And I forget, I think maybe it's Eknath Ishwaran who said that, right? That, and maybe he also was quoting from the Buddhist literature, that everything is desire, right? I think that's what even the Buddha said, right? It all comes from what your desire is. I think the quote is like, desire, as your desire, so is your actions, as your action is, so is your destiny, right? So, and I don't know how to manufacture desire. I think, if you're blessed and lucky to have that strong inner desire to learn, everything else just falls in place. You will find teachers, you will find books, even in an era where there was no internet, somehow I would just go around and find some book, some newspaper shop or some library. So I don't think there is any problem around that. So I think it's mainly desire. How do you develop desire? I think that's a tough one. I don't know how that happens. But if somehow you can manufacture it, I can tell you for sure, it's nothing is more fun, right? You learn, you understand, you make mistakes. It's frustrating oftentimes, right? When you start, what I can also recommend is that pick up something new completely, right? For example, you were learning value investing. Pick up something. People get shocked. Oh, you're a value investor. Why are you talking about A, B, and C? I mean, like, so what? Why do you have to tie your identity to that? Just because you're learning something, do not tie your identity to what you have learned, right? You have learned long term compounding, so I am a long term compound. No, you can be whatever you are, but you learn something else, right? Pick up new stuff. I can see a lot of books in the background in your this also, right? Like, that just shows that you love to read, you love to learn, right? And you keep trying bunch of other things, and some of the things will click with you, and it's fun, right? Like, uh, every couple of years, I think that's the goal I have made for myself, right? That I'll just pick up new stuff, right? Something randomly. I'll just pick up stuff. I'll read history. I'll maybe, I used to love to draw or cartoon, early in my age. Maybe I'll pick that up again. It keeps you mentally engaged, active. It's fun. That's the only word I can use.
So yeah,
So,
the books that you see in the background, there are books on cartooning as well because I also love illustrations. There are books on
nah,
spirituality. A
your
lot of books,
illustrations are great. I've
yeah.
seen those. Yeah, yeah. You.
Thank you. Thanks. So I think
That's I've seen pretty good ones.
one of the things which I think I thank my stars for getting or building a career in investing and writing is that this is one career which I'm sure there are other careers as well, but there's one career that helps you not just earn money but also helps you learn so many things. Right, it gives you the allowance to open your horizons, right, widen your horizons and
Correct.
learn from across multidisciplinary ideas that we talk about or Charlie Munger talks about. Right, so I think
I think learning is now, forget about the fun part and this. It's also becoming a necessity. The half life, I think we all know, right? Half life of knowledge, half life of everything is reducing, right? So from a pure economic standpoint, if you are a young guy who is starting work or has been working for the last few years, 5 7 years or whatever, if you do not if you do not get, whether you force yourself or you have the natural desire, if you do not get into that model, career wise, you will be in trouble. Because I mean, with all the new technologies which are coming in, the whole AI and the generative models and all of that, things are going to change. So unless you can constantly reinvent yourself. I've seen that in my professional life also, from an investing standpoint and everything. Unless you can learn and constantly question and relearn, it's longevity is going to be a problem. So it's becoming an imperative also. It's not like, okay, it's nice to have thing also.
that's it. And I think also the importance of learning to accept other ideas that you probably did not
Oh
believe
yeah,
in,
yeah.
but now, yeah, the facts change. You change your mind. I think if you only if you constantly learn new things, right, and not just stick to your domain, that you also learn that okay, the world can be looked at in a different manner altogether, and does not
Absolutely.
mean that your view is right and the other view is wrong, or the other view is right and your view is wrong. Both could be right in today's world, right? So getting
Okay,
a new
and I've
perspective.
in initial part of my own learning also, I was too focused on just one aspect. Okay, I learn value investing. I love investing. Then over the last maybe 6 7 years, I've started broadening it, right? Because on the same topic, how there's a point of diminishing returns. So obviously, you start looking at other areas, and again, I think in my case, I just get obsessed with a topic and I will drill down. So I started playing poker, so started learning that. Then so just pick up a few hobbies, pick up new areas, history, this, that. And then obviously, right, there is so much material around, right? People just recommend good books. You just take a book, just go through it. So there's no shortage of content. I think that's the great thing, right?
Right.
No
I don't
shortage of content.
understand a bit of poker, but I think you've written and talked about that in a previous forum as well. So maybe quickly, any one or two lessons that you pull out from poker that apply to investing?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, I think there is a lot of analogy between poker and investing, because it's in the end, it's decision making under uncertainty. And I think if you have to just summarize it, that is what it comes to. The way the game is played is, obviously you'll have two cards which are hidden from others. You're seeing your own two cards, and there are common cards, right? And you have to make decisions. Your bets are based on your own. So it's a decision making under uncertainty, means you have to make probabilistic bets. You're making bets, where there is a certain amount of money in the middle, and you have to bet based on the probability of your winning versus somebody else winning. And that's the same thing which people do around investing also, right? You're all at all times you're making probabilistic decisions. So that is what it comes to, right? It's all, and it's risk management, right? How much do you want to risk versus what are the probabilities, what are the odds, what is the expected value. So it's very very similar to in that sense. But again, obviously, there is the other nuances also. There's no bluffing in investing, right? But that's where the so again, it's just a fun social thing which I do. I'm the as they call in this game, right? It's called the fish, right? The person who will lose money in the game, and I'm that, right? But it's fun, right? So some of the things, again, same thing, right? You're not looking at ROI. It's a social event. I play with friends. We have good fun. So it's more of a fun thing, right? I'm not going to be seen ever playing a professional poker game for sure, for as far as I can see. So, but yeah, just pick up a few new hobbies. Hopefully, I'll pick a few more, as years go by. Just keeps life interesting.
I'm sure. And again, going back to a previous episode, like I was talking to Annie Duke. She was a world poker
Hmm.
champion earlier when
Oh
I
yeah,
knew
yeah,
that.
I've read her book.
Right. And I think she often uses a word called resulting, which refers
Oh
to
yeah, yeah,
people deciding the quality of the decisions based on the outcome. I think I could instantly draw an analogy
correct,
to investing, where we look at an outcome
right.
that we've achieved, and we then decide whether the decision was good or not, which is not a good way of looking at it. Right. So
Yeah, and that's a common, that's a very very common uh, uh, confusion which people have, very natural but very common. I've seen investors do all the time. I've seen it with my own subscribers also. You can try as much you can, but you have to train yourself out of it. And I really doubt most investors cannot think beyond it. If they think they have done well in a particular year, whatever decisions they have made, basically people overweigh luck, right? Sorry, underweigh luck, right? And that's a common thread in almost everything, right? People think they made the right decision when it was luck, and vice versa. So I think, yeah, that common thread is definitely there. And I think that's what her book was also about, right? Poker as a way of thinking, as a way of as a way of making decisions, all of that. So in that sense, yeah, it's a good, interesting way of doing it in a controlled fashion. Learn a lot.
sure. Moving on from learning to another aspect of learning, I think which has helped me a lot, though I have not really been so active on that front. But the idea of journaling, right? You started
Hmm.
blogging your thoughts on investing in 2004, when a lot of those listening to our conversation were not even born. In fact, as I admitted earlier, your blog was one of the first key inspirations for me to leave my
Right,
job in 2011 and begin on my own journey of sharing my learnings through blogging. Right now, beyond
correct.
blogging, you've talked to me earlier about this practice of journaling that has helped you immensely over the years, and not just in terms of self therapy, but it has also helped you in problem solving and in generally observing your own past actions. And as I
Right,
mentioned, I've just been off and on of this practice of journal, but I understand its immense power,
right.
especially its power to help us observe our past, thoughts, our past behavior and actions, which we
Right.
tend to forget when we do not write about them, right? But when we write, they get deeper into our memory. And when we
Correct.
refer back to our old notes, we can see patterns in our observation. Like river, we are not the river is not the same always, right? We are not the same always. The
Correct.
more we reflect and look back at our past notes, we understand what patterns we were following, what observations we were making,
Right.
right? So tell me a bit more about this practice of journaling that you have, and how does it help you in refining the quality of your thoughts and gaining wisdom from your own experiences? Also, do you
Yeah.
have any do you have any advice
No,
or
no, go ahead.
suggestions for people wanting to start journaling but who are not sure how to go about it?
So I'll address the second part of your question, right? You heard the tagline, right, from Nike.
Just do it.
Just do it, right? There is all to it. I read. I mean, like you, the blog was an open journal, right, on investing. But then there are a lot of things. Obviously, you're never going to put it in open. It's just for your own personal consumption, right? So my journal, so the blog was always an open journal about investing and my thoughts. It wasn't, directed at anyone to sell something or to say. The entire journey has been interesting, that I started blogging just for myself, and then people came and said, hey, you're anyway writing about these companies, why don't you manage money? So there was never the intent originally, right? I was just writing for the sake of writing. It was like an online this, and I go back to, and sometimes I check my own posts also, right? Okay, what was I thinking? So that was from an investing standpoint. From all the other areas, nothing specific. Well, I don't remember when, maybe a couple of years back, I said, let me just start. And all that I do is I just have a few color pens, and I just take loose sheets of paper, and I just write first thing in the morning. So, I'll just sit down, and whatever is there in my head, whatever, I'm thinking about, what am I mulling about, experiences, observations, I will just write. And if something stands out, I will mark it. And at the end of the week, I'll just quickly go through it and then see. And then, as you were saying, right, I think you touched upon all the points, right? There's a lot of, I think the word is, there's a lot of wisdom in your own experiences. When you it just allows you to observe what is happening. You may be mulling over some question, I will write that down. I may be thinking, maybe my 20-30% of my, or maybe, around that of my journal is also my investing thoughts. Okay, what am I thinking, what is going wrong? I like the whole 2020 period, right, when things went down, and then when it went up, or some personal, issues which have come up over time, and I look back, and I go to those pages, and I see, okay, how was I thinking at that point of time? Like, it's very easy to revise your own personal histories, right? After a couple of years, you'll think this is how you were thinking, but then when you go back, it's like the whole 2020 period. I still remember I had written it down, what I was feeling and thinking, and at that point of time, I made a very conscious decision, right? Survival before everything else, right? I just wrote it down at that point. I said, you know what, I don't know what's going to happen. People are saying this and that, but let's say if this thing goes really bad, right? I want to survive and come out at the other end. Now again, things worked out pretty well, and then people who took on a lot of risk did well. But I said, I want to survive, and if I lose the bit of upside, that's fine. So nothing special. I just get up in the morning, just write whatever is in my mind. I'll just look back. I just have loose sheets of paper. That's it. Just loose sheet of paper. Just write on it, put it in a spiral, like a folder or something, and have one folder by year. So there is one for 2019, 2021, 22, and then I'll just some once in a while I'll just look at the previous pages, what I've marked out, something which has stood out. Like, we are talking on this, right? And then some thoughts will remain from this discussion, and then after a few days, that thought will pop up, and I'll just write it down. And then what you tend to see is that the same things kind of repeat again and again and again, and then you realize, what, something behind it, right? Same thought is coming up, right? Something will, you will observe something, so I'll give you a very very simple example, right? We have all these friend chat groups, right? And we will be, with our personal friends, you will always have that one or two people who will talk too much about politics, or will talk too much about some stuff which agitates everybody. So we have this friends group, and this guy was, always, like, somehow, rattling everybody's, this. And people would try to explain to him that, guy, man, don't do this, right? It just, disturbs the vibe of the group. And he wouldn't listen. Then one of these guys, wrote a very kind, very very, very very nice, message to him on the side, and then later on shared with us. And immediately after that, in the last few days, I noticed that guy has completely turned off the whole, the whole, noise, and the whole drama around whatever, how he communicates. And I just observed that that was like a live demonstration of kindness and of being thoughtful. Now, over time, I will forget it, but I just made a note of it in my diary. And then, over time, as I go back, I will realize that, what, okay, this event which happened, it will remain in. So it's something, it's like, it's a learning, as you were talking about, it's a learning from your own observation and experiences, right? And maybe that is what, this thing does. But again, it's nothing fancy. I just write down whatever comes to my mind, and I cannot recommend it enough, right? It's a wonderful exercise just to do it, right? Just clears your head. That's all I can say.
Moving on from journaling and learning to the idea of meditation and spirituality, and this is one question
Yeah,
which I have, which I ask all my guests on the show. You've shared with me your journey in the realm of meditation, which you began almost like 15 years back, and you
right,
you said that you started that journey of meditation largely to manage stress in your life, right? You also mentioned how you came across Eknath Easwaran, who was a spiritual teacher from India but settled in California, and that as you read his
right,
books, you were influenced a lot by his teachings, his way of mixing Buddhism and Vedantic teachings. Now,
right.
without getting into the nuances or the debates of one philosophy or other, what are the key ideas on meditation and spirituality that you have learned, not just from Eknath Easwaran, but others too, that have helped you in your journey of becoming more reflective, more self aware, and a more evolved human being?
I don't know about all those parts whether they have, to be very honest, right? I can only, I mean, it's tough to figure out, right? What changes came about, right? You never know, right? Was there anything which influenced you or not? But I can tell you about what I learned, right? I mean, it's again learning the theory versus how much actually in practice you achieve, right? So a couple of very standard themes which have stood out between what he said, and again, nothing I think is stuff which most of us have not heard about, right? So he, Eknath Easwaran, he's blended, Buddhist philosophy and the Vedantic philosophy and everything. And he talks about a 8 point kind of a program, which again, if you really think of it, is something which is, all of us have heard, right? So one is obviously, meditation, and which is a very common thread, right? Very simple breathing meditation, right? Just ensures that you are with your thoughts, and it's very tough to do. Even all these years later, I don't think I'm able to do it properly. And then a few other things, right? The company you keep, right? He says, you should be part of some spiritual company, because you are influenced with, by, if you are down that path, if you're with spiritual, this thing, you will get influenced with that. And obviously, if you are part of a community which talks about something else, then you will be a part of that. So he talks about that. Then slowing down, I think, we were talking about, that's one part of things which he says, right? You mentioned, right, when you give the example of the stairs, and it immediately came back as terms of what he has spoken about, right? I think the difference between the literature which I have, the Buddhist literature and everything, and this, and this spiritual teacher, Mr. Eknath Easwaran, right? He's deceased now, obviously, for a long time, but he takes a lot of this, and he makes it practical for life, right? Like how do you implement it? And he talks about slowing down. So and the same thing, right? I think you saw it yourself, but he talks about the same thing. Again, a challenge for me, but I think that's something which that at least has influenced me far more, consciously, right? You want to speed up, but he says you can achieve the same thing, but by slowing down, right? It allows you to be patient and kind also. So another thing he talks about is uh, um, single-minded focus, or he says one thing at a time. So we have this whole problem around multitasking, right? And he talks about, right, that the analogy which he uses is this: let's say you meditate 30 minutes a day, but during the entire day your attention is all scattered. 5 minutes, and he died in 99, so we didn't have social media then, but he was talking about just the media. By the way, since then, you have internet, you have media, and he was talking about running all over the place, and now it's even worse, right? He says if you meditate 30 minutes a day, and then full day you're diverting your attention all the time, it is like training a puppy or a dog. You can't train the dog for 30 minutes and then say, go do whatever you want for the rest of the day. So if you want single minded attention, you want focus, then you have to, he talks of this eight point program as, as a holistic thing, right? So if you really want to achieve focus, calm during your meditation, learn to, train your mind to, pay attention on one thing at a time, right? So do that, right? Slow down, right? Slowing down is very important. And then he talks about kindness, right? A lot of times the lack of kindness is not because somebody is rude, it's just because people are in a hurry, right? You just don't give attention, you're just trying to, just get to the next thing straight away, right? So talks about that, right? Talks about, reading good spiritual literature. And I think, that's one of the things which he says, right? That you read, and that's what I've done, right? There are other very, very good teachers, like I think his name is Swami Sarva Priyananda. He is a Vedantic teacher. You can hear all his talks on YouTube. And I make it a point to keep, a lot of it is very esoteric philosophy, and I'm not able to still get my head around it, when they talk about the Atman and everything. I mean, you understand it, but understanding and internalizing is very different. So it's a little bit tough. But then some of some of this is very nuts and bolts practical, and at least that's a good point to start, right? Just meditate, just try to maintain focus, just try to do one thing at a time, just slow down, right? Just slowing down helps in terms of being, patient, being kind to others, right? So those are the things, right? Again, it's a, it's a very slow process. Again, I don't know, 15 years I've done, I don't know if it has made, I cannot, it's tough to say, what changes it has brought about. So we'll know it maybe in the next 20, 30 years. I will know what. But I mean, again, it's a, again, I think it's a journey. It's important to go down this path. Again, as we talk about wealth, right? I think it's part of that equation, right? I think spirituality sounds all, fuzzy and, all woo woo for people in their early 20s. But I think, it's a path I think most of us do take or end up taking some way or the other.
So it was not just about blogging, which I picked up from you, Rohit. I also picked up the translation, English translation of the Bhagavad Gita from Eknath Ishwaran.
Right.
So that time, I was a few years back. I think it was the first interaction that we had a few years back, where you mentioned about
Correct.
the book and also about Eknath Ishwaran, and I picked up the book and I really loved the translation that he had. So
Correct.
one lesson which I can still remember, and I think I always remember from that translation of Bhagavad Gita, is that he talked about introduction in the introduction about Mahabharat being the war of the battle of Mahabharat, not being a outside war but a war within, right? So
Correct.
he mentioned that all the battles that we fight, they are largely the inner battles that we need to fight and win over. And I think
Correct.
uh, you look at any wars, any battles that we fight in life, investing, relationships, anywhere, it's all about the inner game.
Correct.
It's all about the inner
Correct.
battle. So I
Correct.
think
Correct.
that's one wonderful lesson which I took from him. So I think thank you for sharing that recommendation with me many
Yeah,
years
well,
back.
that's great.
All right, great, great, great. My next question to you, Rohit, is about the importance of changing mind, and we talked about the ability of changing your mind in today's world, which is constantly changing, right? And also
Right.
having the ability of agreeing or listening to other people's view in a world where everyone is disagreeing with each other, right?
Correct.
So one of my favorite statement from Jeff Bezos is when he says, and I quote again, "Anybody who does not change their mind a lot is dramatically underestimating the complexity of the world we live in." I
Correct.
go back to that statement from time to time and reflect on the small and big things I have changed my mind on. So towards that
Right.
question, my question to you is, what is the most important thing you have changed your mind on in the past 5 or past few years, whether it's investing or outside investing? So anything that you've changed your mind on in the last few years?
I think the one thing which I've realized is that there are certain core principles you want to keep the same. Correct. Like timeless principles where you don't want to change the mind, right? Or maybe you change your mind in terms of that you learn, some of these things. That's, I think we spoke about quite a few topics, right? One of the, I think the prominent ones where, I've changed my mind is that, you start looking at it, not as much changing in mind, but it's appreciating it better, as to start looking at wealth beyond just money alone, right? Like initially it's always about, financial freedom, financial success, and then you realize that it should be beyond that, right? So that has, that has maybe evolved. It was, there was the germ of that idea was always there, but that has that has expanded much more in the last 4 to 5 years, and I'm sure it will keep increasing. So often it's there is a small germ of an idea or a spark, and then only when you look back you realize that you change your mind quite a bit, right? But I think as I've journaled, I've realized that a lot of these things are small incremental changes which are constantly happening. And it's only as you look back, let's say 5 years or 10 years back, you realize that what you thought, if you had kept some track of it, what you thought maybe 5 or 10 years back has changed quite a bit now. So uh, in terms of investing per particular, I think I keep things far more fluid over there, right? I mean, earlier my focus, as I think I was saying, right, it was that I was only looking at value investing and only long term buy and hold, and then I realized that's a subset. It has to it has to gel a lot more with personality. And I like to believe I'm a patient investor, but I don't think I'm as patient as one should be. And I can be partly a patient investor, but I think uh, you have to know yourself, I think, as everybody says, and you know that only as you experiment. I've realized that I'm somewhere in between, right? I'm not as patient as some of the real people who can just index and who can just hold the same stock forever, but I'm not as impatient as somebody who wants to do trading or wants to do day trading. So having realized that where I stand in between, I've kind of structured my finances, my portfolio also to take that into account. And earlier it would be more around what are others doing, right? Like what does a Warren Buffett do, or what does this person do? But you know what I think, as you explore and think about what your temperament is, the change actually happens as an outcome out of that. So, and then I think as you do this, everything else kind of follows from there, right? As you think about some of these broader areas as to what you define as wealth, what you define as some of these top ideas which you're talking about, right? A lot of other changes happen as a outcome of changing the broader thinking process, right? So let's say if you think of wealth as encompassing all the other things, you start changing your mind on some of the other the derivatives, if you may call, right? How you spend your time, how you invest. So I think the broader areas are the areas where I tend to focus, right? And that I like strategy versus tactic, right? The much abused term, right? If you get the broader strokes correct, then you can always keep changing your mind on the specifics, right? Like you say, okay, you know what, compounding is important, right? And time is important, then I will not worry as much about where did I make 6% alpha or 2% alpha or zero alpha. Just continue with the market. Earlier I would be focused far more on alpha. Now I'm focused more on the duration of it. The moment you start thinking in that terms, your risk management, focus on risk management changes. Start focusing more on risk. Start focusing more on diversification, things of that sort. So I think I've changed my mind quite a few, but the broader areas are where the evolution has happened, and then obviously that translates into changes on the specifics. And there are, I mean, quite a few. I mean, we can keep going on, but that's the broad strokes.
And yeah, I think the bigger idea that it talked about it, that it's important to change the mind right now
Correct,
while keeping the core intact, right?
correct,
You just tinker around the perimeter of it and keep exploring ideas, keep improving your skill
correct,
of
correct, correct.
compound over a period of time. So I think that's a great advice. My next question is about your advice to youngsters. Right now, we are living in a world where the pace of change is just multiplying, even as a formal education system. It seems insufficient to teach all that is required to thrive. So, what advice would you offer to students and young adults in this area, in this era, in self-educating themselves? And what are some of the key work and life skills you think they must learn or they should learn and hone to do well over the next few decades?
I think we touched upon this first this point actually. The people who are entering the workforce now. I think we touched upon this point earlier. I think it's learning, right? If you have a curious mind, and I think that I don't again I think we came to that same point, right? We spoke about desire. I think curiosity is what drives the desire to learn, right? And then when you have the desire to learn, you will learn and you will figure stuff out. Again, I don't know how, where and how the desire or that curiosity comes from. Maybe it's cultivated, maybe it's innate. If you have it, that's great. If somehow you can cultivate it, that is great. But if you have the desire to learn and self improvement, I think almost everything, you see the common thread between all the stuff which we are talking about and what you do. If you have that common thread about curiosity, learning, self improvement, I think almost everything else falls in place, right? You will, you will find the right careers, you will do financially well, because you know what, you're constantly learning, your course correcting, you're reflecting on it, right? Almost everything else becomes a derivative, right? Because opportunities are there, right? Opportunities are there, there is enough material to this. I think the core is somehow, you know, if you either have the desire or you have the drive to learn and self improve, somehow everything else kind of falls in place. Everything else is a tactic, right? So just, you know, just keep up that, you know, just keep some, you know, keep that that desire to learn, to improve, and then, you know, explore stuff, right? I know people, you know, graduate, do this and that, but I think pretty soon figure out, you know, what area really kind of, you know, resonates with you. I think the word is, you know, passions and all that, but you know, I don't know whether, you know, I mean, I've been lucky that I found my area of interest or passion early on, and you know that because, you know, when you keep doing it and you still don't get bored, then you know that that's an area of passion. And how do you figure it out? I think, you know, you just experiment, right? Experiment a bunch of things, something will, you know, resonate with you. And if that pays well, I think, you know, you and me have been lucky in that sense, right? That we love something and it pays well also. But even if it didn't, right, we would still do it, right? Because we'll figure out other, like when you also started and when I also started, we were not looking to make a living or make any money out of it, right? But that we did was just a byproduct, right? But it makes life so much more richer, right? So I think as long as people do that, right, most of the times, you know, I'm reminded of that, you know, that great movie, right? The Three Idiots came out in 2008, right? Towards the end, I think, you know, that is what, you know, Amir Khan's character says, right? That if you have the passions and you become, you know, something good in something, money or success kind of tends to follow. Obviously, it doesn't follow immediately, right? That's where the compounding aspect comes into play, right? But if you, yeah, if you just keep going at it, you know, it does work out, right? I think we've all seen that, right? So, you know, that's what I would suggest, right? Just find what interests you and then just keep, then just pursue it, right? Just keep at it, be patient.
Again, there's this very nice lecture note from I think the British author Alan Watts with the title "What Do You Desire?" And he says that he meets a lot of students, right, college students, and who ask Alan what should they be doing in life, right? Some of them like writing, some of them like painting and architecture and all those type of stuff, right? So he tells them, or he asks them that what would you do if money was not a part of the equation, right? So
Exactly.
you need to, so what, of course we all need money to survive, and as I said, it's like oxygen, right? The lack of it is going to kill you, right? But you also don't need an overindulgence in that aspect of life, which is money. So
I
I
mean, and
think
look at
again,
it, right? The people who have made a lot of money, I mean, will, but a lot of people, right? I mean, not everybody, are people who actually were following something which they were really deep into, right? And that they made money came as a byproduct. They pursued it well, they provided value to the society, and the society, and you know, the great thing about now about India is that not everybody has to become an engineer and a doctor, right? There are so many careers available, right? So if you're really interested in something, you'll get good at it. And as I think one of the things which I feel will happen is as India grows and as it becomes wealthier, these other softer things will, very simple things, right? There are so many things. I don't know if you would remember, right? People of our and maybe the previous generation say they go to a doctor and, oh, you know what, he charged so much and he gave just a pill, right? Or financial advice was considered as, what is, there's no value in it. But now we see, right, people understand the value of services, people understand the value of expertise. I mean, there are chefs, there are people who now consider food as, you know, as an art, right? They go and they, you know, they eat out. It's not just, you know, it's an experience, right? Same thing is true, I think, for all the other areas. You look around in all the advanced economies, and I think that is what is happening, right? If you have a passion, it will come through, right? It, you know, it's natural. You have that enthusiasm, you have that passion, slowly it comes through. It takes time. For some people it's quick, for some people it's it happens much later. And then, as you said, right, the money, you just have to figure out how to continue to earn a living while you're following your passion. And that's what I think, I know most of us have done, right, at different stages, right. You just can't live on passion, so you have to figure out that balance, right, that I will do A, B, and C if that pays the bill. But if I'm interested in something else, I will do that also. And then I'll figure out, right, at what point I switch from A to B, right. And that's what you did, right, in your own personal journey. So
That is true. That is true. I think, and if we really love doing something, this is something which I understand, right? If we really want to become good at something, right, we'll put in a lot of hard work and dedication to that, and the money is automatically going to come. If not now, maybe over a
correct,
period of time, right? So it has to be a combination. You simply cannot simply say, okay, I am passionate about art, so let me become an artist. What if it doesn't pay money? Of course, you need some money to survive and live a life,
correct,
meet your needs, right? But you cannot be running only after money. So I think that penchant for lifelong learning, right, I think is such an important
correct,
one, because you keep improving yourself, and that's the only important thing about the journey of life, right? You need to go through the journey well, rather than
correct, correct.
trying to
And,
become something in life. That is just automatic.
and that's the point I have always written on my blog also. I tell people, some people say I want to be a full-time investor. What you have to understand is, why do you want to do it? If you're going to do it only for the money, then you know what, that's a bad career to take. Because it's a investing actually full time is a very tough, I think I've read this somewhere, it's a tough way to make easy money. You cannot, the ups and downs are very high. You know what, if you're really into money, start a company, get into a job, rise in a company, there are a bunch of other things where you would be able to do it. And I'm sure other professions people say the same thing. uh, Getting in for money, you will not be able to survive, because over time the market will kick you out. It exposes your weaknesses. If you're only in for the money, there will be times when you will not make money. Then what will you do? Let's say you don't make money for 3 4 5 years, which is true for any profession. Let's say you're an artist, and let's say for the initial 7 8 years you don't make any money at all. Fine, you will figure out something to make a living, but will you be able to sustain whatever you are doing, whatever passion you have? If the answer is yes, then what, eventually, but you have to be ready that it may not ever be financially successful, but then the reward is in doing it in itself. So yeah, so that's, I think. But I think on balance you will be thankful that you did it, because you will make whatever living you make, but life will be far more fulfilling, right? Because you followed what you really and I think it just comes out, right? Nobody will tell you do A, B, or C. As you do it, you will intuitively know that this is what you like. And that could be anything, any interest you can think of, right? I mean, people, I know, I have relatives who like, who love nature, who love hiking and all that, and they've built their life around that, and they actually run a business around that. So you can find ways of figuring it out.
That's right. If I'm right, you have a couple of daughters, right? So apart from the idea of learning and being lifelong learners, what are the most important life and money skills you have tried to imbibe in them? So that's question number one.
The-
Second,
that's a tough one.
though kids don't listen to the parents and they listen to everyone else, that's another point. Second question is, what has surprised you the most in being a parent that you never thought before becoming one?
So let me take the second one first. Um, it makes you far more patient. I think that's the thing which it makes you empathetic. It makes you far more patient. It becomes less about you, right? So I think I didn't realize that that is what happened. Specifically with girls, it makes you also more tuned also to people, right? I mean, I've always grown up around, I mean, obviously, in college when you're growing up with men, some people are emotionally tuned. They can pick those things. Interpersonal skills, at least, have not been great. But when you have daughters, when you have women in the house, that's you turn to develop at least that muscle which is missing, at least that comes, or that skill starts coming up. Obviously they'll not still not agree, but you learn to listen and all that. So that's definitely there. In terms of learning, in terms of teaching, I think I personally have been, maybe I think it is because that's how we were raised also. I've just generally left them to figure stuff out on their own. I would generally suggest something, here and there, but between me and my wife, there are only a few things we just insist on, right? One is, obviously, work hard, do whatever you need to do, but do it, wholeheartedly. It's okay if, the results don't come through, but what we want to see is, you focus on the effort, right? And then if the results come, well and good. And then second, obviously, around money and wealth and everything, be thankful for what you are getting, but don't become entitled, right? Because independent of everything else, people like you and me, we are reasonably well off, right? We are the lucky people, right? I mean, not a lot of people have this level of comfort, this level of security. So obviously, I think we try to instill in them that you're lucky, but you can't take it. There's no entitlement for you. You'll have to work hard and you'll have to do stuff on your own. There's no pot of gold which dad is going to give you at the end of at the end of college or something. you know we worked hard to get what we had to do. You will have to do the same, right? Same thing like we were given, right? We were given a very good foundation, a good background, for which all of us are thankful for. And that's what we'll, I think, do for our own kids. Nothing very different from what I think most of us will end up doing.
So, Rohit, we are nearing the end of the conversation. I have just a few quick. I still have a few quick questions from you,
Sure,
and you
sure.
can you can take out your time and you can think about them and you can reply. So, first two questions combined. What is the single best piece of advice you ever got, and what is the single worst piece of advice, which in hindsight was a bad advice that you ever got?
I can't think of a single advice. I think it's usually you just. I would say in hindsight, the best advice is being kind. I think, right. Everything else. Uh, and again, it's not as much an advice, more I think, as I've observed, right? Just being kind, being generous. I think that kind of beats almost everything, right? You see it all around you, right? Who are the people you end up admiring, you like to work with, right? Not the smartest, not the richest, right? I mean, fine, you'll see some rich and a smart guy, you envy that person, but if he's a bad person or it's a jerk, you don't want to be with them, right? So it's being nice, it's being kind, it's being generous. I think that's the best advice. uh Worst advice, um I really can't think of, because usually what happens is, bad advice, you try it out and then, you just quickly forget. But I really can't think of uh, any bad advice. I think maybe, compounding at a very high rate of return to achieve returns, maybe not an advice, but an observation, right? I think that's a bad advice in general, right? Trying to chase very high returns. And from an investing standpoint, for sure. Or even from a compounding standpoint. That's the mistake people do in compounding, I think. That's why the name of your show is good, 1%, right? I know you talk about the 1% show, but I think you would have heard, right? Better to get 1% better slowly rather than trying to get 10% better quickly, right?
Quickly, that's right. Any day it
Correct.
works better. The slow pace works much better than the faster pace, because you end up surviving at least. Uh,
Correct.
Talking about books that have influenced you, Rohit. So, any books that you would like to recommend in finance, outside finance, that have shaped you and your approach to investing, decision making, and life?
I think the usual 101s which people have heard of, and I can't think of newer books which have come up which are better, right? So, books by, Phil Fisher, Benjamin Graham, right, on value investing. I mean, just general, that's that general philosophy, right? You don't have to read too many books, right? I think I like some of the books. I like what Morgan Housel also, has to say. It, because it goes just beyond money. It's around the psychology of money. I mean, I think because I've read quite a bit over such a long period of time. I think investing, just these standard books, right? I mean, the usual, the Intelligent Investor, Peter Lynch's books. From an investing standpoint, I think there is that's. I think I would just recommend that.
And outside
So
investing, anything that you recommend?
I think we spoke about some of those. I would suggest from a life skill perspective, Eknath Ishwaran's book, his book on meditation. That's really good. The Bhagavad Gita, which is not even a surprise to anyone. If you can take the time and the patience to really read through it and mull over it, right? That is really, that is some, I think that would kind of just ensure that if you can just somehow do that book, you would not need any other book, right? I mean, it's not even it's not even close, right? That single book, itself is like, other 100 books put together, right, from a philosophy standpoint. But I think, yeah, I mean, we tend to take philosophy at a later point in time, but at least if you can dabble in it as early as possible, I think it's, it's the why and the wisdom part of it, right? Everybody knows the how and what to do, right? But why you do it comes from these things, right? No book on investing will tell you why you are investing, right? Or why you should lead your life in a certain way.
I think that's the
So
most
yeah,
important question worth answering or worth seeking an answer for. So
correct. There are
great
the
to know.
right questions, right?
That's right. And here's my closing question to you, Rohit. So everyone walks on their own journey of life, and everyone must play their parts well. But what, according to you, is a life well lived?
I like this quote from Buffett and some of the other people, right? That at the end, if you have some people who should love you, really love you, right? Then it's a life well lived, right? If at the end of it, what, if you look back and have no regrets, and you have friends and family and everybody, like, I think, it comes back from the same point we were talking about earlier, right? Who are the people at the age of 80, who you feel are the most content, right? When you look around, right? It's not the richest people, right? It's people who have a very healthy and a very, content social life, who have performed their responsibilities, their duties towards themselves, towards others, towards their family, right? So I think, that's what, I think, as long as, we can, I think I read this somewhere, right? You write your own obituary and then you work backwards from there, right? I think same thing which Warren Buffett has said, right? So if you start thinking of it in that direction, a lot of things become clarifying, right? Work backwards, right? So yeah, that's what I would say, right? Again, does not happen automatically, but at least, a north star to follow, right? Beyond money.
I think that's a great insight to end this conversation, Rohit. Been very kind and generous with sharing your insights over the last 2.5 hours almost, right?
Thank you.
And I look forward to interacting with you.